Hey everyone, the Talking Dads podcast is brought to you by Little Scholars Early Learning Center. Whether your family needs infant care, a preschool program, or before and after school care, Little Scholars' highly rated Step Up to Quality programs provide quality early childhood education at an affordable price. Visit www.littlescholars.net to get in contact with an enrollment specialist and schedule a tour of any of their 5 Lake County campuses. Here's the deal. Talking Dads fans are getting a little bonus. Mention that you heard about them through our podcast, and when you tour, and you'll receive $25 off of your registration fee. Again, that's Little Scholars Early Learning Center, where children learn, play, and grow together. We are also brought to you by Pub Fredo Gastropub. Pub Fredo was voted Best Gastropub in Cleveland in 2019 by Cleveland Magazine Silver Spoon Awards. We love Pub Fredo. Their menu is chef-inspired, always pushing the limits of traditional pub fare. The other night I had a burger, I believe it was called the Pub Burger. It was incredible. Cooked perfectly. It was amazing. And you won't have a problem pairing your favorite item on the menu with their great selection of local craft beers, crafted cocktails, and of course, an amazing bourbon and whiskey selection. I went with the Bullet 10-year with my Pub Burger. All of this in a cozy, fun, come-as-you-are atmosphere. You can check them out at pubfredo.com and on Facebook and Instagram at PubFredo Gastropub.
We are also brought to you by Marky Fresh Barbershop in Menor, Ohio.
Bro, I love Marky Fresh.
It's the best, isn't it?
Dude, I get cut there like every 3 weeks. My kid gets cut there every month
Every
and a
now and
half or
then.
so. Month and a half, 2 months, something like that. They do such a good job.
The environment is phenomenal. Everybody's awesome there.
Can I tell you a secret? I don't
Please.
even give a shit about the haircut. It is so much freaking fun going there.
Just to hang out.
Yeah. I have such
Just have a good time. Every time, man.
Yeah.
You get caught. If you want to be in there fast.
Oh, yeah.
Their whole app, everything, booking to get in.
So
It's so
easy.
convenient and easy, but you get caught up
Oh, yeah.
because you just want to hang out and talk with these guys.
You know what the word is? Shenanigans.
Shenanigans.
So many shenanigans.
You don't want to leave.
It's so much fun. But honestly, they do a fantastic job.
They really do.
I look way better when I leave than when I get
You
in there.
really do.
I know.
So, yeah, Marky Fresh.
Yeah, book at markyfresh.com.
Book, get in, stay fresh.
What's up, podcast? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Talking Dads. This week's special guest to kick off year 3 is Anthony Zalewski. Anthony's been on the show a couple times before, and we've gone on his. We had a really good time catching up. It had been way too long. We talked a lot of legacy. We got into some deep stuff about what we're doing to set our children up, and then also just kind of the lasting impression of how we want to be remembered and things like that. Yeah, we had a really good time. The whole thing is great. Give it a listen, tell your friends about it, and have a great weekend.
In a world where moms continue to dominate parenting authority and a father's role is minimized in society, 2 dads take on the toughest parenting topics on a weekly basis, all while drinking bourbon. They are the Talking Dads.
I don't know if you know this. You are the very first episode of year 3
Wow.
of The Talking Dads.
I'm
We
very-
just finished year... Well, I guess Perry was the first episode, right?
Yeah.
He was first year, second year, and third year. So, yeah, second
All right.
of the third year.
Hey, sloppy seconds. I got
But
it.
still very exciting,
I'm happy about it.
as you should be.
I'll take it.
Well, it's good to see you, man. Thanks for coming
thanks for
in.
coming
I
in.
didn't
Thanks for
talk
having
to
me.
you in forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for coming in and having a
Thank
drink
you, sir.
with us.
I'm very excited.
Good.
As you should be.
As you should be. That's true. So before we, I guess, really get into it, go ahead. Now that we're in year 3, like we have at least dozens and dozens of new followers and subscribers.
At least.
So
We're at a
that haven't heard
60% view rating on our last.
I can't even remember. You've been on
3 times?
2 other episodes.
Yeah.
Two.
Because the
and
Yeah.
we did one.
We did one on
here.
your
yeah.
pod.
that's right. Because we did a Zoom. We did
Oh, yeah.
one of the first ones at the old studio, right?
Yeah.
No,
Oh, yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
it-
yeah.
it was
he was at the
Marco.
old
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
the
yeah.
first time around,
Like
and then
episode 6 was the.
Was it episode 6?
I believe so.
Nice, man. You're an OG.
yeah,
Look at
Yeah,
you.
You know.
no big deal. It's like whatever. Yeah, I've been around a time or two.
But for real though, he was our first like haven't known you for 20 years type of person on the show, right?
Yeah,
I was, yeah. The
Like
first-
we met up at a
first random-
bar, like because we found each other on like Instagram or something.
oh, that's
like
right.
that.
We met at where do we?
And then we figured out that we knew Evers.
Stacks.
Oh,
Stacks
yeah, yeah,
was
yeah.
like, hey, you gotta check these guys out. And then
Is
watch.
that how that worked?
And then we went
Okay.
we went over to
Well, it was
Morehouse
Yeah,
at the time.
which isn't even there anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, that's because we didn't even have phone numbers. I was like sending you Facebook messages.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here.
I remember I got there and I'm like sitting at the bar and you're like over here. I'm this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing a podcast.
Real official shit, man.
Well, and the funny part too is I watched like the first one that you guys put out, and I was like, "Fuck, these guys got a studio like in my basement."
Gotta talk to these guys. They're pros.
Man, I think if I would have watched that first one, I'd be like, yeah.
There's soundproofing on the walls.
I
These
don't
guys
know.
are fucking real.
It did look cool. The optics were great.
Oh, they're there. Yeah.
I didn't know how to talk for shit.
Yeah, we didn't know what we were talking. Yeah. We're like, so we have these notes here.
Oh, wait.
We're gonna hit this
20
one.
seconds past our deadline.
Oh my god, that was the worst too, man. Sitting there and we have Larry in the
In the booth.
in
yeah.
the booth, and he's like 30 minutes in. We're like, oh shit, we got to hit these other marks here. We're like, we got all these different things we got to talk about. You're telling a story. We're like, okay, that's enough of that.
Yeah.
We
Yeah, cool
next
story, bro.
question.
Okay.
So when did you decide to have kids?
Yeah.
Check.
When did you know that you wanted to be a father?
And tell us how you felt. Anthony, how did that make you feel?
Well,
Oh, man.
Those are good times.
yeah.
Good times. That was almost 3 years ago.
yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, right.
Right.
Damn.
I can do math. So anyway, back to the original. So for all the new people since then, and then in between, you've been on a show.
Yeah,
first, but, let us know let them know who you are. What makes you a dad?
Other than sperm that I donated.
Right.
Got it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead of providing the seed.
I'm doing that now.
Yeah, do that
we're
now.
actually-
Oh, you are?
I don't know. Am I?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
if I was. We're
Oh
actually.
yeah, we're
recording?
rolling.
yeah.
baby. We are rolling, baby.
We just start, man. We just got moving. We don't even tell anybody.
You guys
like
are
that.
consummate pros. All right, here we go. All right, so my name's Anthony. I am a father of 3. I have 2 boys and 1 girl. What makes me a dad other than genetics? I don't know. I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and so I just kind of grew up with always knowing I wanted to be a dad, and then finally found somebody who was going to tolerate me long enough that that was an option. But yeah, I mean, I'm a nurse, but I'm not, and I don't work at the bedside anymore. I'm
Gotcha.
a operations manager.
No big deal.
Right.
Congratulations
no
on all
bedpans.
your success.
Right.
Yes.
Working my way out of the bedpans.
There you go.
So yeah, so I do that, and I mean, what else? What else? What's the?
Well,
Well,
I
I
mean,
mean, you-
so I
Will you
think
give
the
us some-
reason that we kind of even hooked up in the first place was you have an affinity for dads and their well-being.
Well, yeah. So I have a not as successful podcast.
Well,
The talk.
it's a high bar.
Not my. Well, I have Not My Dad Bod, which is it started out as a play on the Not My President Trump.
Oh, yeah,
right,
that's
right,
right.
Not my president. Yeah.
Because I was like, I want to do something. I was always into fitness, so I always wanted to do something that was like, I want to just, I want to inspire people. But then I realized I don't have any certification or anything, so who the fuck's gonna listen to me anyway? But it's like, let me figure out what I can do, and I think after I became a dad and started doing, nursing and all the other things that I was doing, I was trying to figure out all the challenges that I have. Maybe there's something there.
Sure.
And so I started kind of doing that, and I just would like write, and then like, hey, let's just do a podcast. Like,
Yeah.
everybody's doing it.
Right. Literally.
And so I started the Not My Dad podcast, and it was it wasn't me like train people, because that wasn't the hook. Wasn't I was going to teach you how to work out. It was, let's talk about all the challenges. And I brought on people that I knew who were trainers and stuff like that I met through Facebook and all their stuff to be the ones who were going to actually talk about the technical aspects or what training. And I would add my 2 cents about what made it hard for me as just a normal dad trying to do it. And then, these guys were dads too. So it was just a lot of kind of similar for what you guys do, where you're pulling people in and just kind of, what are the challenges for you as a dad?
Right.
But then it was kind of related around the physical fitness part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I kind of rolled into it. And the podcast was just that. It was just talking about, getting people on and talking about what are the challenges and how not to be a manatee.
Yeah.
That's the best. It's still the best.
Yep. Love that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was that. It was just, and I think, like right now, I am, and we can get into this a little bit later too, about just where I'm at with not doing the podcast as much, only because I'm trying to figure it out and what I want it to be, or like what my priorities are again.
Mm-hmm.
And social media, and there's all these different things that factored into like kind of, so, I mean, I still want to do stuff. I still think that like it's
The
so
creative juices are still there.
Yeah, and there's other things I'm doing, and that's why I was excited to come in and talk to you guys, because I'm like, this is cool. Like I like talking about shit, and I like to have it. The challenge for me was always because it was just me.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was, I have to drive the conversation.
I don't know that we would be here going on year 3 if it was just Steve or if it was just me.
Yeah.
I think the fact that we get to do this thing together and bounce ideas and go through the struggles and grind
Right.
together and like hold each other accountable, I think that makes it so much easier.
Oh yeah. Can you even
to
imagine just being
continue.
alone? I mean, that's what you're doing.
I don't think I would be.
No, I mean,
Well,
we push each other because there's times, obviously, we've been there before.
Yeah.
We come to a crossroads, we're like, what do you
Does this
think?
matter?
Right.
Should we keep going? Or
Right.
It's like, and then one of us would be like, fuck yeah. I mean, come on. Why not?
Well, and
Like,
I think that the challenge too for me was always trying to make sure that I was, that I wasn't just, it wasn't just me going, okay, here's this person, and now they're talking the whole time and they're talking and talking. So I wanted to make sure it was somewhat of a dialogue.
Sure.
But if I couldn't get somebody to come on and have a, do a podcast with me, then it was like, I didn't want to just, but that's when I had these big lulls and when I would do them, because I'm like, I just don't want to talk for the sake of talking. Right. I'd have to have some kind of point to what I was doing if it was just me by myself. And then I'd listen to it and I'm like, I sound like an idiot.
Listen, I mean, I can totally relate to that. There's been times where, I mean, especially when COVID was like intense for a little while there. Not that it's not now. I'm not going to get into that. But like there was times where, hey, we were supposed to do a show and someone had to cancel because they were close contact. Okay, very good reason. But what are we going to do here?
Yeah.
We haven't missed a show like every week for a whole year.
Right.
We got to put something out there. So Steve and I would get together. So what do you want to talk about?
yeah. Just kind of stare at each other for a while. It's like, what are we going to talk about,
we would
man?
have to do just like an on the spot, like pre
Well, I mean,
show meeting,
Right.
and which is fine, and it
but
works
at the
out.
same time, sometimes we would come in here and be like, what do you want to do?
Right.
I don't know, just hit record.
Yeah,
And we would just
right,
go.
right.
Well, and it's a lot easier too when there's, because that's the one thing that
'Cause there's
I'm
two.
missing out on is to have that dialogue, to say, sometimes I don't always have to have the ideas. I don't always have to drive everything.
Right.
It's like if I had the other person talking, I could react to some of their stuff. That's why I enjoy coming on like this with you guys, because I can just talk.
Yeah, being able
Right.
to react is phenomenal. Because there's times where it's like, well, we don't know where to go from here. So it's like, boom, you come up with something real fast, or vice versa. Like it's nice to be able to.
Well, we learned that
miss that.
very, very quickly too with even having guests on. Is like, let's not put ourselves into a corner here with a schedule.
Yeah.
Let's just talk. Like we're all talking about the same general thing.
Right.
And where it goes is where it goes, and that's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I would always have a somewhat of a theme when I brought someone on, because it was something about them. Like when it was Sean
Richardson,
yeah. It was, being a ninja dad, and we talked about that stuff. Or Ryan Hurst, the guy that was from Japan.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that was his, but it was more along the lines of having a couple of points and then letting them drive the rest of it, just kind of guiding them and take it off from there. And then if it seemed like that was kind of winding down, then okay, now we can move to the next point. Or sometimes it was that I would just get in the middle of something and go, oh, now I want to do this. And I think that's when you get good at podcasts with guests, you start to understand that, you'll be able to hear a trigger to start something else,
Yeah,
even
for
in a
sure.
different direction.
Topic, yeah.
Look, there is a skill set involved with, whether you want to call it journalism or interviewing. Wow.
Yeah.
We knew.
There is a skill set that, like, I don't know. I mean, none of us were classically trained on that. I think that you can only get better with reps.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, again, we talk about it from the beginning is like, even when we transition to, hey, let's just see what happens. Let's just shoot the shit and let it go where it goes.
Yeah.
Even in the beginning, it was just, there were some lulls and you had to learn how to fill that dead space. And there was no I know we studied it quite a bit, actually. Like we would listen back to episodes and be like, all right, that
avoid
right
this.
there was something we need to understand, that when somebody starts going on and on about this or like repeating themselves, that we need to switch up the topic.
Because they're trying to carry it.
They can say,
Yeah.
and you're like, you so there's like that balance of trying not to be rude and cut somebody off.
Sure.
But also move them along and kind of push them into the direction that you think is best for your audience.
Right. Yeah. And I think, so one of the things that I'm kind of working on now is the Better Human Initiative.
Right.
And my brother-in-law, Jim, and I are trying to do a podcast with that.
Oh, good.
And that is a dialogue. It's not just me talking. So we just finished up one, and I'm just editing it and everything. But it's about just us just having a conversation, more or less, and kind of talking about things. But we'd have notes because he's very prepared. He's a pastor. He's got, so we'd have an idea of what we're going to talk about. Because I would say, like, this is what I want to talk about today.
Sure.
But I'm also looking forward to the fact that some days he's going to be like, I want to talk about this. I'm like, great. I'm going to sit back and I'm just going to react.
Yep. It's so nice to be able to do that.
Yeah.
That organic flow just makes it so much more, such a better quality of content. Like,
It just feels natural too. That's the best part about it.
It's natural conversation, and I think that's what people want to hear.
Yeah.
I think that there's a reason why mainstream media news channels don't get as much notoriety anymore as podcasts or as other forms of digital media that are not confined to commercial breaks every 35 seconds. Do you know what I mean? Because and like listen, if you're a journalist or you're on a big network, you have to get your point across in like a minute and a half before they go to the next break. Like there is no time to massage and organically get there and maybe explore.
Right.
You'd have to predetermine what your point is and get it.
Yep.
That's it. And I think people are kind of turned off by that because it's staged, right? Like we all know that this isn't a conversation. This is just an opinionated.
Absolutely. It's all chopped and screwed before it even gets out there, too.
Chopped and screwed, right? And so here, like, we may come to the same conclusion on a topic, but getting there, I think, is the fun part for people to listen to.
Yeah.
I know I get that when I'm listening to somebody else's podcast. It's like, oh, okay, now I understand this topic much better because you're somebody who's intelligent about it is actually talking about it, and it's not just a scripted like blah 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 blah.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about too, where like when I did it, I would always want to be able to have some like if somebody learned something from a podcast that I did, even if it pulled one new thing out, like an aha or whatever, I was happy with it.
Sure.
But I agree that the difference between like mainstream media and podcasts, that's the good thing about like podcasts and stuff like that is anybody can have a podcast, right?
Yeah.
So everybody can have opinion, but the bad thing about it is everybody can have a podcast.
Right,
exactly.
So some of these fucking nut jobs can have their opinion just out there.
Sure.
And it's up to the person, the consumers of it, to understand.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. Like with news, for example, like you pick what you want to watch, right?
Right.
So that's opinionated, right? So like for when you pick a podcast to listen to, that's their opinion,
Right.
So like on the news, you watch it and they will tell you the news, but then for the next hour, they're going to explain to you how you should feel about that
Right.
Well, yeah, that's-
right.
I'll tell
You know what? This is what you need to think about. What I'm telling you.
This is where I'm trying to find something that is like the most unbiased news source that I can find, and it's very hard to do that.
Sure.
Especially with all the shit that's going on. You know, depending on who you listen to, it's depending on who's the bad guy and who's the good guy.
Sure.
Yeah.
So with all this stuff with the riots and all this other shit that happened, you know, I was trying to find one source that I could just listen to, and I was listening to CNN for a little bit, just on satellite on the way to work. And I'm like, I just want to hear what's going on. It wasn't because they were anti-Trump or whatever, and they're definitely anti-Trump.
Sure.
But it was, I just want to hear it. And then I would get like 5 minutes in, and I'm like, I can't even listen to this anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, you tell me about this, and then these guys, it's like, it turns into a tabloid.
Yeah.
Like,
That's exactly
just
what
tell
it
me
is.
what the fuck happened.
Because
Yeah.
again,
That's all I want to know is I want to know the news. I want to know
Right.
what's going on. I don't want you to tell me
Yes.
how to feel about it.
Exactly.
And again, I don't even think it's their fault.
No.
They've grown past the point of relevancy to where they are now predetermined by their sponsors and
Right.
whoever is funding
Yep.
it to say, okay, here's the time that you have to do it. And so there is no thought process to
Yeah.
any of it, is what I feel like. It's just, well, this is the conclusion that we're coming to, and blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, okay, like, I don't know. It's hard for me to watch any news source. And you know, you have to, right? You have to get your information from somewhere. And I don't
Right.
care if it's cable news or it's 3, 5, and 8, or if it's Facebook or whatever. Like, you're going to get your news from somewhere. Like,
Right.
you have to, like, just people, we need information. I think it's the same thing with podcasts or whatever. The responsibility is now on the audience to determine which outlets will succeed.
Yeah.
And on one hand, I love that, because if people want to hear opinion A, they're going to get the attention.
Right.
And organically, the problem with that becomes then is once they get the attention, that's when all the ads and sponsors and everything else come in, and then that gets diluted, and now you have to go to source B, and it's just a cycle. And I don't know how you get around that. I mean, that's the age-old saying is that marketers ruin everything, and it's so true.
Yeah. Well, I think too, I think when you're being the consumer, I think you have to be really cognizant of what you're consuming, because like you're saying, you can get it from cable, you can get it from here, you can get it from here, you can get it from Facebook or whatever. But I think that the problem is if people are at that point, and I think this is where we have kind of evolved into this, or devolved, if you want to even say it, where we have people thinking for us. And, you know, you're like, I'm going to have a conversation, and I've had this with people that I know and friends or whatever. When you have conversations, it's, well, this is what it is. And I'm like, oh, okay, why?
Right.
Well, because why? Like, give me, like, I don't want to fight. I don't want to have an argument, but if you can't give me a rational thought, like some kind of reasoning for why you think the way you think, instead of just, I read it on Facebook.
Well, that's the thing is people will find, like, if you go and look at a video online, say you're watching some type of political argument, right?
Yeah.
And you start reading the comments, you could tell these people just went and reviewed the first article they found on Google, and now all of a sudden they're a pro.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, whether it be stocks or something with gas prices or the pipeline, whatever article they found first, that's the facts they're giving you. They don't have any they've never worried about this argument ever
Right.
before this day.
Yeah.
So think about that, though. That is how we've been programmed to talk about information, though, because of the 45-second spots that you get to hear it.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, we think that that's acceptable to disseminate information.
Yeah.
Even if you think that you're not trying to do that, at the end of the day, why are you doing that? Why are you putting a comment that is absolutely ridiculous on Channel 3's Facebook page based on why are you doing it? Because you're hoping to get attention. You're hoping to
absolutely.
Yeah.
get as many likes as you can on that, whether it's funny or it's a complete hoax or it's misinformation on purpose, whatever. It doesn't matter. If you can put something witty or put a meme out there that is going to get a ton of attention, you fulfilled your need for that attention. and the subject matter almost doesn't matter.
No, at that point.
And we've been trained to do that, though.
Right.
Like that's by consuming the information from the cable networks and everything else. We've been trained to get our information that way, and so then when we give it, we're doing the same exact thing, whether we recognize that we're doing it or not.
Yeah, I think so. And one of the things I talked about in one of the blogs that I do and stuff was that I'm not on social media anymore. And that was a conscious choice. Part of it was the fact that my wife would, and literally just like, she's like, you need to get the fuck off your computer. Like you are stop getting on your phone and like looking for stuff. And because I wanted to see who liked what I put. And I would post pictures and stuff just to try to get people, and that it was that Pavlov thing of like, I just want that.
You want that gratification.
And I realized that was driving me more. And then I felt bad because then you sit there and you're like, you put all this effort into something and then it doesn't pay off the way you wanted it to. And then you feel like you wasted your time or whatever. And things weren't fun anymore. And that's why like the podcasting and stuff was like, I got to find a reason to make it fun or rich in my life again. Right. And this is just me. This is not, this is not an indictment or an opinion on anybody who else is on, social media. For me, it was just, I don't miss it. I really honestly do not miss the fact that I'll get on every once in a while to see like a family thing, and I'll look and I'll scroll for a second and I'll be like, oh Jesus, this is stupid. And I'll just get off. The one thing I do miss, and I think this is actually ties in a little bit to like with you guys too, is I met people that I wouldn't know them if I didn't meet them on social media, right?
Right.
And that was the best, easiest way or the most convenient way to communicate with them. And so it wasn't because people just were like, I don't want to talk to this asshole. It was like, it's just, hey, I'll just send a message. And I don't talk to a lot of those guys now. And it's like, I have to like do something or.
I mean, case in point is I texted you like a week ago.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, we haven't talked in forever.
Right. Yeah.
And I know, like, I'm trying to think. It was probably like Christmas time, I want to say, that either you put a podcast out or you were still on social media or something that we had talked about something.
Yeah.
And, it's been a couple months since then. Yeah. And I was like, man, I haven't talked to Anthony in a while. I'm like, I'm going to reach out and I'm like, Steve, I'm going to let Anthony know, like, see if he'll come back on.
Yeah.
And then I realized that, like, oh shit, like it used to be like you would throw up a fitness article or something like that, and I would read that and I'd be like, oh, cool. And like that was my connection to you, right?
Yeah.
And we just haven't had that. So I texted you or whatever, and it's like, yeah, let's do it. So I mean,
the thing with
there is that connection that you get with people that
on social media, for sure.
Social media, for sure.
And I think one of the main reasons, because I've kind of been there too with the whole Facebook. Like I rarely post anything on my personal page.
I am either.
Like every now, like once in a blue moon, I'll put like a picture of me and my kids or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
But for the most part, it's all the Talking Dad stuff.
Right.
Is what keeps me on there. Otherwise, it's the same thing. It's like, man, why this post that I put out there? Why am I not getting what I want out of it?
And I
think with the Talking Dad stuff, it's like, yeah, sure. Like some of the stuff we post sometimes, like mostly it's like our stories, like in our stories now, right?
Right.
But like we put like a photo, something we thought was hilarious out, right? And like you get nothing, and we're like, oh, damn it, I just want to take that down.
People liked it, and they were my family.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and then you're like, damn it, this isn't working. And it's and the sad thing is that's kind of like how society is now, right?
Sure.
Like think of these kids that like that's what they base their life on is what they get. I'm not saying everybody. I'm not talking like I'm not generalizing all kids, but I'm saying like a lot of people, not just kids, people.
Yeah.
They put these pictures out there of themselves or something, and like hoping for 1,000 likes. You know what I mean? And like hoping that that's how they are going to get their recognition is through.
I mean, we've always done that, right?
Oh,
like,
we all have.
It's been. I mean, even like I remember like grade school. I remember going to a new school.
Yeah.
And putting on, whatever, this new Tommy Hilfiger overalls. Me like, yeah, I'm going to crush it today.
Oh, yeah. Just hoping for someone to be like, hey, those Grant Hills are fucking tight, dude. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Mom bought them for me last week, dude.
But then we gauge what we do the next day based off of those reactions.
Right.
And it's just now, like with social media, it's just at scale to where it can really fuck with you.
What's the thing is it can mess with you. Like, I mean, if you control that and be like, okay, this isn't real life. This doesn't matter.
Right.
But some people are like, this is the end of the world.
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
no one likes me. It's like,
Yeah.
that's not the case. Like, I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know.
So I don't know if you guys remember, it was called the Best Damn Shorts Sports Show.
Oh, yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They ran a promotion. So I was just getting into, I wasn't even in nursing yet. So it was like just around 2001, 2002. They ran a promotion one year. It was like, who wants to date a pro cheerleader? And it was send in your submission with a videotape, send it in and stuff. And so I was like, all right, I'll do it. So I had my neighbor videotape me, and I did this. It was so, I tried to make it as corny as I could, right? So I was like, did a cheer, and I had a wife beater that I drew the logo for the show on it.
Do you still have this video?
I wish I did. I know.
All right, continue.
Well,
Sorry.
I was trying to go. I was like looking for it online one time.
Right.
But I submitted it, and I was like, well, whatever happens, right? And no shit, just one day they showed it on. They were showing the promo for it, and there was me, and I was like, holy shit! And then the next night, and I knew nothing was going to happen because what they did is they would show the two videos, and then they would pick the guy, and the guy would come on and be on the show.
Gotcha.
So they showed my video,
And you had no idea.
and I was at work. So I'm like in a hospital, right? So I'm running out in the hallway, dude, check out the TV, and I'm running like all the nurses like, and like people could be dying,
Sure.
Yeah,
whatever.
Fuck that. It's not important right now.
Just keep breathing. So I'm watching this, and it was like that was my 15 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So I was like all excited, even though they didn't pick me. And the
Right.
cheerleader chick was like, "Oh, what? I'm a dancer. I'm not a cheerleader." I'm like, "It's called Who Wants
Wants
to
to
Date
date a cheerleader.
What
Yeah.
the-
Hello.
What are you talking about?" And so, but that was my like 15 minutes. But that was a lot of work, like videotaping it, put it on the video, sending it, like all that shit. And now it's like, all right, I'm already done.
Yeah,
right?
and then
It's
upload it
easy,
instantly.
and there's no work involved to it just to get on. So it's not even getting your 15 minutes. It's just getting your spot and then getting likes. That's
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I would argue that like it's so easy now, but it's so crowded.
well, yeah, you still have to do something to set you apart.
Right.
But and you're totally right with that though.
But the effort involved isn't nearly what it
Right.
was.
So I think part of it was like you think about it, right? Like, okay, this is a lot of work to do this. So if this isn't really good, it's not worth the effort. I'm just gonna not do this instead of, okay, it takes me just videotaping me, like hitting the record button on my phone, and then I don't have to do anything else to get it to go. So I think that's the point on that. But I think, yeah, it is part of how you have to separate yourself.
Sure, you do. Yeah, I mean, I know, like, in the podcast space, like, in the beginning at least, we had these, I guess you call them meetings, like Steve and I would be like, okay, here's the numbers that we have to hit in order to reach a certain amount of people, which means that we can go to people and say, hey, come advertise with us. And dude, we haven't had one of those meetings in a year and a half, 2 years, because I think that, this is something that we talked about, and this was one of those lulls where we were like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And I think that both of us enjoy the process more than anything.
Right.
Like, the results are fun, and don't get me wrong. I will
It's fun
text
to,
Steve
it's
and
fun
be
to
like,
look
dude,
at.
this is a rough week for downloads.
Yep.
Like,
You're like, oh man.
and it is what it is.
Right.
Like, can you control it? Yes. Are we willing to dump the amount of money in there to force it? No.
Right.
I think from day one was like, it'd be amazing if this went big, right?
Right.
Sure.
But at the same point, we're like, dude, if we get to just hang out like this
And
and
I think
put it out there and just enjoy what we're doing.
And that's the difference, I think, between like this and where I was, where it's like, I'm sitting here by myself.
Sure.
And if my heart's not in it, you're going to know it because no one can carry me. Like if you're having an off day, you guys can have a conversation.
Right.
Maybe Steve shoulders a little bit more of the
100%,
conversation.
Yeah.
When it's just you, it's like, I don't even know why I wasted my time with that. And so I would rather not put one out all the time. For me, it was like, if I'm not really into it, I don't want to just do it to do it. And that's, that's
I think the other thing with that too is, and we've done it before. We've had shows where we're like, oof,
Yeah. You'd be like, oh man,
But
I had a rough one.
I don't want to waste his time. He
Right.
doesn't want to waste my time.
Right.
And so we put it out there.
Yeah.
And so part, I think, of the cool thing about I guess I would call us like a mom and pop show, right? Like we're not backed by some giant corporation or anything like that.
Right.
The cool thing is like we can just put it out there.
Yeah.
And because we enjoy the process over the results, it is what it is. Like we
Right.
move on to the next show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if there was a shitty show, there was a shitty show. I don't care.
What are you going to do?
Right.
Like, it is what it is. We probably learned something, and while we were doing it,
Yeah.
we still had a good time.
Right.
Absolutely.
And
We're
that's,
like,
I think that's what it is too. And that's my thing was, if I'm having fun with it, I don't care. Like
Right.
I just want to have fun. And so I would just make sure that it was either something, if it was me, it was like something I was going to like had a lot of motivation to talk about, and I would have, then I could just rattle it off and
Right.
not have those, because it's even worse when you're by yourself and you have dead minutes, because then you're just like editing all the
Oh,
little
yeah.
pauses out
Yeah,
and all the
yeah.
other crap out, and you're like, I spent more time making this thing sound like reasonable than
Right.
it took me to record it.
Well, I think that's what has made it easy now too with the editing is I hardly have to do anything anymore.
Yeah.
Which is just amazing.
yeah.
Because now because in the beginning, I remember I was like, dude, like we were doing like an
The
hour
sound thing.
episode and it would take me like 5 or 6 hours
Yeah.
to edit it. And I was like, what the
God, remember
this
the
is
beginning though?
miserable.
Like trying to figure out the sound?
Yeah.
Like,
oh,
like,
yeah.
hey man,
Yeah.
your mic was low.
Yeah.
I remember you were out of town or something. I went over to your house and I was working on, I forgot what episode it was, but it was just like, my voice was super loud and our guest was like, you couldn't even hear him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So every time that person would talk, we'd have to turn it up.
Yep.
You're downloading like filters and you're like manually. Oh yeah, it was the worst. And
I had one where I never got it. I never put it out, and it was so depressing. It was Joe Decker, who is the guy who did the Suck.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
12-hour thing, and he was in California, and I called him, and we did a Zoom thing or whatever the hell it was at that time, and it was just echo.
It's
And
like,
I couldn't get, like, I had my Jason,
Mm-hmm.
who was way better at this shit than I am, and then I had actually that guy that I did a podcast with.
yep.
The engineer. I'm
What's
like,
his name?
Carl.
Carl, yeah.
House. Who's? Sorry, I fucked his name up.
Yeah.
But him. So I had him, and they're both like, "I'm sorry, man." And so I called Joe. I'm like, we'll have to try to do this again sometime or whatever. And then just things happen. But I was like, I felt like, damn.
Dude, that was like Sean Richardson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you hooked us up with him.
Yeah.
And it's like this dad that's in Georgia Georgia?
Georgia.
Yeah.
And the conversation was
And
great.
It was an amazing conversation. He's
Yeah.
talking about changing careers and like opening up his own gym and like the shit that he does with his kids with like the training and talking about the hammers and it was an amazing conversation. And while we're doing it, everything is perfect.
Right.
Yep.
And I go to edit it and it's just echo. I mean, I think that was the only time in this whole in the 2 full years that we've done this, we paid somebody on Fiverr to get rid of as much as we can the reverb, and it was like $20 or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, it
But,
wasn't
like,
anything crazy.
and it was better.
Yeah.
but it
But it was
wasn't
still,
good.
it was still tough, man.
And I felt bad, you know.
We did the one with the guys from Penelope. And remember, it wasn't uploading.
Oh yeah,
And we thought we lost it.
The quality was great.
It was all
but
good, but we thought we lost it.
We did it over Zoom, and we did like a good 2.5 hours with them, and that's a lot of data, right?
Yeah.
And like I made sure it was all set to the cloud and all this kind of stuff, so we wouldn't lose it. And I
started downloading it here.
We started downloading it here, and it's like, all right, this is gonna take forever. So I remember I left my computer here to stay on the Wi-Fi connection. I'm like, I'll just go pick it up tomorrow, and it was still going. Like, fuck. And it took us 5 days. I reached
Yeah.
out to Zoom, and
Holy
we were able to
shit.
recover it.
Wow.
It was amazing.
We were trying all kinds of different stuff. We're researching
Dude, I was
everything. We're like, oh my God, we're going
we
to
were
lose this
both-
one.
We were sick over
yeah.
that.
I'm like, dude, we got it.
Because we've had it happen in studio before.
Yeah, we've had people come back.
We've had like Ronnie, Tim, like technical difficulties.
Steve-
Like we're no
Yeah, Steve.
geniuses.
Yeah. I mean, it was like can you guys come back? And they're like, yeah, absolutely, man.
Well, that happened with us.
Oh yeah, it did
Yeah, it
happen
did.
with us.
We're
That's
like,
right.
This is great. Oh, there's no sound.
That's right. The first
Ah,
Zoom one we did.
I forgot about that. That was a great one, too.
That one was totally my
I drank
bad.
half a bottle of fucking Eagle on that and was throwing up in the street.
That's right. You were like, would you go out for a run or something like that? You're a bad man. If I'm about to throw up or something, I'm like, I'm going to go lay in the shower. This guy's like, I'm going to go do a quick 5 miles.
I just eat.
I just
I was
eat.
like running and I'm like, oh, maybe they're good. Maybe the arrow. No, but that.
That's one way to get it out
Looking
of
out
you.
their window at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like, oh, he's jogging and puking again.
Great. Yep, he went out again.
Guy's crazy.
He's going out for a run at
I
3.
forgot that one was jacked up too. Yeah, I mean, we've definitely had our mistakes,
Yeah.
and we try and learn from. I don't know that we've ever had the same mistake happen twice.
No. Yeah. That's whatever.
Something like that.
There we go.
But shit happens, right?
Yeah.
And that's super frustrating. But I also think that it's part of production. I mean,
Right.
You know, we don't have a team in here that's
don't have-
running everything.
We don't have our tech
and
guys
We
here.
don't have our interns yet.
Yeah.
So
We've had some guys, try to come on, but
Well, the makeup person was good before I come on. That was
oh, that's good. Yeah,
yeah, she's
great.
phenomenal. Thank you.
Oh man, yeah. No, it's been a lot of fun. I do hope that you, with the Better Human Initiative, get that going. I enjoy listening. I think what's cool about your show when you were consistent there for a good 6-8 months, something like that. And what I thought was cool about that is that yours were all virtual, I guess, or like not in person.
Right.
And that's a hard thing to do.
Right.
That's a very, very difficult thing to do. When we were locked down and we had to do only Zoom for, 2 months, 3 months?
Yeah.
That was rough.
Yeah.
Like, we got better at it, but it was
brutal,
rough.
though.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
But I like that you were pulling guys out from different continents.
Yeah.
And talking to them about their experiences, and they were telling good stories.
Right.
And I'm a sucker for a good story
Sure.
and learning information like that. So I do hope that you get some stuff going on that because
Well, and I still
it's
want to
fun.
do the. I'm not giving up on the Not My Dad podcast. I would still, if it worked out, I think I'll be a little bit more selective and it'll just happen. But the Better Human Initiative, which by the way is seriously because of you guys. That's because of the conversation we had,
Yep.
and that's actually what I talk about in the podcast about how the Better Human Initiative came about because we were talking about, and you just said I want to raise better humans,
Oh yeah, we got in trouble for that.
and that stuck with me. You guys,
That's
get it?
trademarked, by the way.
Is it?
Raise good humans.
Yeah.
We gotta stop
got
saying
called
it.
out.
Yeah, on one of our.
Some mom blog.
Oh shit!
And they weren't mean about it.
Right.
They weren't mean about it at all.
Who
They were-
cares?
we just posted something. They're like, we love seeing our Raise Good Humans TM out in the wild.
We're like,
And so that's
so-
a cease and desist order.
Yeah, exactly.
We're like, all right, well, we'll stop using that.
Well,
But no, hey,
tough
whatever. Good on them for
Right.
for taking advantage. But yeah, so we've got to come up with a better or a different tagline now, I guess.
Well, and that's because I actually looked. I was like Better Human Project. I looked at different
Right.
ways to do it, and all these things were taken. And there's podcasts that are like Better Human, and they're everything from success, like self motivation
Right.
to fitness and everything. And I'm like, all right, then again, it was like just find something that works.
Well, and that can be frustrating
Yeah.
too. I remember when we were trying to figure out what this show was going to be called.
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing was Dad's drinking bourbon. Like, that's what we're going to do. So we're
Yep.
going to drink bourbon. We're going to talk. And we went to go like secure the Instagram name, and like, oh shit, there's a podcast out there called Dad's. And
Yep.
those guys are great. Like,
Right.
I actually reached out to them and they're like, hey, love what you're doing, blah blah, blah, and they were cool.
Yeah.
What else do we have? Dad stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna do Dad stuff, and and it's like you look and it's like, oh, this domain is taken.
Yeah.
And like, all right, well, what the hell? And I don't even know how we settled on the Talking Dads or why that was available.
Yeah.
but
It was so that every time when I first heard that, I was like, hey, these guys good like Walking Dead fans.
yeah,
Well, because they had the Talking
Walking
Dead.
Dead. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a good play. That's fucking smart.
It would have been good.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like you just kind of roll with it, right? And I think that experience of trying to figure it out
Yeah.
lets you know that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like if you're putting well-intentioned content out,
Right.
and you're trying to get a point across, like the point matters.
Yeah.
The name, it is what
Well,
it
and
is.
I think too, like even with the Not My Dad podcast, I had to quickly get over the fact that sometimes I just didn't want to talk about fitness with
right,
people.
right.
So it was like, all right, who cares? Like, if people are listening and I have good stuff, it doesn't matter what I'm talking about, as long as it's good, good content.
When I did it, we weren't talking about fitness.
Right, no shit.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, let's just, I'm just going to have fun with it. And if it's what's interesting to me and it's things that I want to know. And, if it starts out as a fitness and we turn, like, even with like guys that I had on, there was like the getting in the door was the fitness talk because they're trainers or whatever. But then it went every different way.
Right.
And I think that's, again, it's just you find what works and you make it. And when you're really motivated to talk about it or it's just good stuff. I mean, I didn't even know when I was trying to figure out what the name of my podcast was going to be, I'm like, I don't even know what, there's like everything with dad bod in it and all the same thing. Shit was taken. I couldn't, whatever. And I don't know. I think I was just looking at stuff and at that time, not my president was a big thing. I'm like,
Right.
all right, let me try that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we sat in his basement for days just trying to figure something out.
I mean, it literally
and that was just trying to figure out a name before we even did anything else.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because we were like, listen, if we're going to do this, we have to have a name. We have to have a logo. We have to secure the domain. We have to do this. And like, my head, I'm thinking it very business oriented, right? Like, because in the beginning, it's like, hey, start a podcast. You're going to become rich and famous. You know?
Yeah.
And not that was ever really the goal, but it was in our heads.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Like, it was like...
So looking at that cat and that thing, we're like, we have our live shows.
Yeah, exactly.
We could be going on tour.
We'd be selling out Playhouse Square.
It'll be easy.
That's how I sold it to my wife. I'm like, look, I'm going to be on this with these guys and we're going to go on stage.
Yeah.
It's going to be amazing. And you won't have to work anymore.
Right.
It's like, sure, go do your little podcast thing.
Yeah, but it's funny how quickly, though, you do come to realize that what you're doing matters more than who you're doing it as.
Right.
And I think that if you can understand that, then like I encourage people to start podcasts all the time because you can. It's not difficult to start. Like, is it hard to continue? Is it hard to have the production value? All those things? Yes, absolutely.
Right.
It's not a walk in the park. But if you want to just get a creative outlet and talk and use this form of media to get information out, whatever it is, it's amazing.
Well, and it's so different now with like the resources that are there. Like when I first was looking at all this stuff, I'm like, this is going to be a lot of work. Like, how am I going to make sure it gets on all these different things? And I don't know who it was. It was like, check out Buzzsprout. Yeah. And I did, and I was like, this is great.
It's amazing.
Oh,
like,
it's phenomenal.
This is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
I don't care what I'm paying for it. If I just have to put it out there, and then they'll figure out how to get it to everybody.
Yep.
And then people are like, oh my God, you're on all these things. I'm like, I didn't do shit. I just, I'm just doing this part of it. But but I think that just shows how much this is taken off for a lot of people.
It's huge. I mean,
so much easier. Can you imagine not having Buzzsprout to put it out everywhere?
It's just trying to get my artwork for the Apple podcast. It was like, this is the right size. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
What a pain in the ass. Like,
so bad.
And so, the resolution needs to be at least this, and it's got to be,
Yeah,
Dude,
it was.
Our logo is literally 3 words and a circle. And like, it wouldn't take it for so long.
Why is it so difficult?
It was such a pain. But, and that's why I'm terrified to change it. You know what I mean? Like,
just leave it as is.
We got it. Like, it's good.
Let's just keep it.
Yeah, that's when I changed the podcast logo, that was like, I'm like, it was like a while in the making.
Right.
Because I'm like, I got to make sure it fits and all this other crap. And it's going to look good if people are just
we
looking at
had
the
some
phone and whatever.
some brain sessions on, using what's the editor, Photoshop and all that kind of stuff. Like, trying to figure out how to do that. What do you think about this? And I have to make it look like this because it's got to be in the right size. Sure. And it's like,
we're looking up like memberships for everything, trying to figure out how we're going to pay.
Yeah.
And dude, there's like, it's ridiculous the amount of money you can spend just looking for artwork and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, if you want to, I have a cousin who's, or my wife's cousin. She's a graphic designer.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it must have been probably 2 years ago, holidays. And we were talking, she's like, I really like your guys' logo. I'm like, well, thanks. But like, are you saying that because like you're going to hook me up and do something really great for her? She's like, no, I wouldn't change anything. I'm like, yeah, but really though. She's like, trust me, you don't want to know what I charge. I'm like, Yeah,
But we're family though, right?
right.
Come on.
You know, but like, because she works on like Skittles and Starburst and
Right.
stuff like that. Like, she's pretty
This
amazing.
is like a weekend project for her.
I'm like, yeah.
Back to the family thing. Come on. Throw me a bone here.
But no, she was like, that stuff is crazy expensive if you want to do. I mean, and then if you want like the equipment, you know, all that kind of stuff, just it gets crazy.
Well, even the music, like if you want to do an intro, like I was looking at like Ben Sound, that's where I got some of my stuff, and then somebody was like, just look on YouTube and get whatever
Copyright free.
Yeah.
Royalty free. Yeah.
But even some of that, even before that, when I was like, yeah, you can have this and you can put it on whatever for $89. And I'm like, jeez.
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Like I'm on the wrong end of this podcast thing. I should be putting all
Seriously.
this shit out there for people to buy. instead
right.
of just-
Right. Yeah. I mean, the industry is just going insane.
Yeah.
I think I read a stat not too long ago. I think podcast or the amount of people polled, and again, I never trust these polls because I've never been polled on anything. I don't think. But it's like the amount of people that say they know what a podcast is went up like 79% from 2019 to 2020. And then the amount of people that say that they regularly listen went up like 50 something percent.
Well, especially because of all the shit that's been going on the past year.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're sitting around more, and I think the fact that there's more applications and stuff where you can just pop it on your car and listen when
That's
you're driving.
the thing
or
that I
whatever.
love about the format is, you know, I love watching movies or TV shows. I like to binge watch a show with the best of them.
Yep.
But I almost stop doing that unless I'm really into a show because my brain can't do one thing. Like I've been trained and conditioned over the years to multitask everything.
Right.
So for me to sit down and watch a movie or a show, that's why I miss movie theaters because like
Yeah, because
you're
I mean,
stuck.
Yeah,
you
you're
don't
stuck
wanna be
and
that asshole on your
you can't
phone.
pull your phone out.
You know what I mean? So like
Shows
you
are
can
usually in the
actually watch
background
it.
for me.
Right.
Shows are a background noise for me while I'm working or I'm editing or doing something. So that's what I love about podcasting, though, is like I can listen to that in the truck. I can listen to that at my desk.
Yeah.
Like I can have it on, and it's almost soothing.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I have to give it 100% of my attention.
Right.
And there's times that I'm like, oh wait, I want to rewind that.
Yep.
You can like
Right.
it's just-
Exactly. You can rewind
it's
it,
not
listen
like
to it again.
live radio where which I guess you can do that now, but like
True.
you know, it's just a cool outlet where we're not expecting 100% attention from
Right.
people, and they like the consumer knows that,
Right.
and so it's kind of cool if they download your shit,
Yep.
they listen
Play
to
it
it.
on-
If they get something out of it, then people are pretty good about telling you about it.
Yeah.
So that's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a fun format.
It is great.
I don't know about the whole video thing.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that people don't sit there and watch 3 hours of us talking, but
No, but we
it's-
put it out there anyway.
We put it out there, and it is fun. Like, I mean, I don't know. Actually, surprisingly, sometimes they do get crazy amounts of views, like
Yeah.
random episodes
Yeah.
that people like to watch versus listen to. But
Yeah.
certainly not the level that they listen. But
No, listening's where it's at.
That's where I was trying to figure out when I wanted to do the podcast or whatever, was like, do I do video, do not? And it wasn't. I think it was just for me. It was just like I'm just editing one thing for I'm making.
I think at this point, if we would have never started with video, I don't think we'd be adding it in.
Yeah.
But since we've just always done it, and it's really no extra step,
Right.
all it does is just take
And
more
it's
space
different
up
too.
on the
So
hard
I
drive.
think
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
It's more space, more download.
But I think it's different too when you have this kind of setup where there's usually more than two people.
Right.
So like I recorded the Zoom interviews with people, and I'm like, it's just me in one screen and them in the
Yeah,
other screen,
right.
and nothing else
It's
happening.
tough, yeah.
So who wants to watch that? You know,
Yeah.
like if I thought about, well, I wanted to do a beer episode with a couple of my buddies and whatever, and I'm like, that would be cool because then you could have the shit out there
Right.
and people watch what you're
Yeah,
doing.
that's fun. And I think that's better with the reviews.
Yeah, I mean that's why
Yeah.
we took the reviews.
Oh,
off
yeah,
of
that
audio.
makes sense.
Like we used to have the reviews on audio,
Right.
And we kind of realized that actually we got a comment on one of our it's like somebody reviewed us.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, hey, it's really cool, but why like we can't?
Where's the video? You
I
want to see?
can't see what you're talking about.
Yeah, the video for the reviews
And I was like,
definitely
oh shit,
makes
that
sense.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You know, so we just took it off of the audio portion.
Right.
And it's video only, and
Yeah.
that's fine.
Makes sense.
So there's different applications for it, and it all circles around to.
But I think like you made this point before too, is years down the road, the video's out there, right?
Right.
I mean, I put the video on sometimes. Like a family member will be like, "Hey, I want to see something."
true.
One of your things, like, "Oh, I pull up this YouTube video on a TV real quick."
Yeah.
And the kids are like, "Oh my God, Daddy's on TV!" Like they just get so freaking excited. They're like,
Yeah.
"Uncle Ian!" Like,
Yeah.
like they're so excited that we're up there on the TV.
My son
That's
will
cool.
do that with YouTube, and he's like, "Look, Daddy's on TV," and
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, this is the only time it's ever gonna happen." But
Yeah.
unless
Yeah.
I'm
This is
wanted
it,
for
buddy.
something.
Watching you
Yeah.
court cheerleaders.
Yeah.
And yeah, this video popped up. Damn it! How'd that get out there?
Why are you wearing spandex?
I thought this was gone.
Jackson, close your eyes.
Don't watch this. Yeah, it could be good or it could be bad.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of like why do a podcast? And we said from the beginning too, at the very minimum, we are going to chronicle what happened when our kids were growing up,
Right.
and that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, for me right now, it's just talking about how big of an asshole Ben could be sometimes.
And that's fair.
He knows it.
I love that kid. That's fair.
When you're 18, I want you to watch all these things to see how big of a dick you are when you're.
The kid is, yeah, he's funny. He knows it too. But
Well, that's funny. So one of the things that I do with my kids, and it's not even an original thought, but somebody gave me the idea. On their birthday, I write them a letter.
I think you
Yeah, you did
to
talk
us
about that.
this
I
before.
did.
Yeah.
So somebody gave me the idea. It was like, all right, on their first birthday, and I think some people just do it on like the first birthday, and they put all the letters together and they give it to them on their 18. Well, I'm like, shit, I'll just keep it going. So I'll write them a letter, and Jody will write them a letter on their birthday. And part of it is, this is what happened this past year, right? Just like remember this stuff. And part of it is me kind of whatever's really like weighing on me as far as things that I want my kids to remember. Like I put it in the letter. Jody will do this. Oh, you were so cute. And you were just, whatever. And I'm like, you were a dick.
Yeah.
Like, you were a shithead.
You should know
that whole fucking year. You were just like a
you want to see all the
whiny
notes
little
about
shit.
you?
Yeah.
Here they are.
And I can, because I can imagine like 18-year-old Jackson reading this going, yeah, I was an asshole.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I think those are cool because it's like, it's just stuff that all this kind of stuff that we have the opportunity to do now when we're dads and the kids are young, that you take advantage of all that shit.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, one of our favorite things to do at family get-togethers is to watch the home videos, from when my wife was a kid and, all that kind of stuff. And that's really, really fun. And, the idea is that if at the very minimum, 20 years from now, when my or 30 years from now, hopefully, when my grandkids are sitting around for Christmas,
Right.
and we can pull up a funny video where we talked about, or we get in a conversation of, remember when Gibbs was 5 and he did this? I'm like, we talked about that.
Yep.
Hold on, let me
Yeah.
find
Yeah, we
this
find that.
episode,
Absolutely.
And, that'll be a lot
It's
of
there.
fun.
Yeah.
I mean,
We don't take home videos like we used to.
No, I mean,
which is crazy to think about.
Well,
because
think about
the technology is
Christmas.
so
Like I remember
much
my
better.
dad putting like the camcorder up on a tripod,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
and Christmas morning, all of Christmas morning was on video.
Right. Yeah, we chronicled things so much differently and so much more. That's the thing. So that like
And we kept it.
Right. Wait.
And
No
you kept
matter
it.
what the quality was, it wasn't about quality. It was about the content.
I still have a Super 8 projector in my attic. I don't even know if the fucking thing works.
You'll be like
I
Clark
have those-
Griswold one day. You're gonna get
Yeah.
stuck in your attic and you're gonna play that
I'd
up
be
there.
crying with that weird hat and the fur coat on. But I still, and I have that. And we used to, it was funny. We used to we had a screen that you'd pull the screen
Yep.
up and you play this thing. And it was like just that nostalgia of watching it. And that was one of the things that I wrestle with right now because both my parents and one of my brothers are gone.
Right.
And like my brother, it's been 18, 19 years almost. My mom, 18 years. My dad would be 15 or 16. And I was thinking about that when I was talking to Jodes, and I'm like my kids don't know their grandparents on my side. They don't know their uncle on my side. My wife doesn't even know them.
Right.
And I kick myself in the ass for not having videos. Like I'm like practically like blackmailing my family. Like find videos,
Right.
anything you have of my parents or my brother, and give it to me so I can show my kids. Because I'll show them pictures, but that doesn't capture everything like it does a video where you can just see their mannerisms or their speech or whatever.
Right.
And they get an idea of it. And I'm almost jealous sometimes because of the fact that there's so much of my wife's family still, because she's younger and they're just much healthier, that they're around. And it's a blessing, but at the same time, it's like, I just wish
Right.
I wish my kids knew my parents, you know, and who they were, and maybe there's a way to figure that out. But it's like I just took it for granted.
Well, absolutely, because I mean, when we were little, our parents took those videos.
Yeah.
They always had the home videos. You always had those VHS tapes all over the place.
Yeah.
And that kind of just went away.
Right.
You know, because everything was, you didn't have the VHS tapes anymore. You didn't have, like,
You take it for granted now.
You do.
We have a video camera in our pocket at
exactly.
all
And
times.
you have these videos, and then at some point you're like, well, I'm out of space on the phone. Delete. You start deleting things. You start getting rid of shit.
Or, you know, you're doing it on Snapchat. You got 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Whatever
Like,
it
you're
is.
not taking a video that's 3 hours long.
Right.
No,
You're
'cause
taking
a 5-minute video.
Let me do this.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, do this again.
Right.
Because this didn't look great. I can't post it to
Right.
social media.
Gotta filter it
Exactly.
out, yeah.
And the best moments that we look back on those holidays, or you know, that we look back on from 1988, the best moments are when it's just ridiculous. And like, I whenever we see something like that, I'm always like, man, that would never make the cut on today's hard drive.
No shit. Yeah.
No.
But those are the things that we look at and we're like, man, that's freaking hilarious.
It is.
Yeah, that spontaneity that was just what it was, and you're like, oh, I gotta get this done. Like, and it was never about, hold on, I gotta videotape this because it's funny. It was always that
just
shit's
there.
already running.
Yeah.
It's there.
and you just happen to catch it.
Yep.
Right.
And so then you're watching it again, going, oh, this is cool.
Even if
Yeah,
it was
but
only
then-
because it was too damn heavy for somebody to carry around
Yeah.
all the time, but like the
Yeah.
end result was amazing.
Yeah. That's what my sister was telling me. She found a video from my father's, I think it was his 60th birthday party, or so it was and she's like, you were carrying the camera around, and my brother-in-law was carrying the camera around, and you guys were just fucking hilarious because you were like narrating like with a nature show or some shit like that. And I'm like, that's what I want to see that. You know,
Yeah,
like, you're
yeah.
walking through it, but I want to, like, that's the stuff I miss. That
My dad did it up until I was in my mid-20s. He'd be like, on holidays, he'd be like, here, take the camera. And I would sit there and walk around with the camera
Yeah.
and take videos.
yeah,
I would do funny shit the whole time.
Right.
But he still has those videos, and sometimes he'll play them like on holidays. He'll just have them on the TV in the background.
Right.
Like when we're over there for dinner or something.
That's what we do. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing.
And like, so what I start doing now is so you know, you get your kids' artwork, they bring it home, and you're like, okay, this is cool. And you
Right.
throw it out. So what I start doing is I
That's a
take
good time.
pictures.
Does your kid ever catch you with the shit
Oh,
in the
yeah.
garbage?
Oh, yeah.
hell
Dude,
that's
that
like,
is so rough.
what
when-
the?
I just made this. Like, yeah, but it's kind of
Oh my
garbage.
God, your brother did it. Your brother threw it out.
The worst is like 3 days later when they're like, "Where's my snowman I
You're like,
made?" I'm like,
Oh.
"Oh, it's in mommy's office at
Hey,
work."
I took it to work. Yeah,
I put it in
I
that
took it
box
to
in the
work.
basement with the rest of the artwork that's not really there. But I start taking pictures of that stuff.
Yeah,
And then I made an album. So I have an album
So
for
smart.
each kid.
yeah,
So I have it in Google Photos.
nice.
So Google Photos takes all of my pictures off my phone and
Right.
automatically
Yeah, yeah,
puts them on the Google Photos. So what I did is I made an album for each kid. And so Sam's is like from the his ultrasound pictures. And then when he was born, and then like all the pictures leading up to now,
nice.
plus his artwork,
Yeah.
all of his videos, all that stuff. So I have his album,
Right.
and then I have Ben's album.
Right.
So I've been trying to do that. I've trying to
That's
organize and go through all the pictures and everything, videos.
I had when Jackson was when we knew we were gonna actually everything was good and Jackson was gonna be born. I created a Gmail account for him, and I would send him emails. And I'm like, one day you'll read these. And I think I got like 6 months into it, and I'm like, all right, it's just everything. And then I forgot, and I was like, I'm gonna do this for each of our kids, and then it just kind of dropped off.
Right.
So I think that's what the
letters.
the letters do. But one of the things that I actually do now, and I think this is something that I wanted to talk with you guys about anyways, but so the last blog that I did, I was talking about something that I'm playing around with, and I call it the Book of Dad. And so what I was thinking about, because I'm like, all the shit that my dad taught me, I wish some of that stuff I would have wrote down. And it's just mindless shit, you know. My dad and I never, like, my dad was 36 when he had me.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time I got to be old enough to do stuff, he was like, I'm tired. So we never
talk
played
to your
catch.
brother.
We played catch one time in my life.
Really?
So he's always
Okay.
like, your brothers, you'll do it.
Yeah.
And that was fine. That's what I did. But my father-son time with my dad was always, let's put shingles on the roof. Let's do plumbing. Let's do electrical. And I'm like, this fucking sucks. But
Right.
when I moved out, I was like, holy shit, like, I know how to do some
You're
of this
prepared.
stuff.
Right.
And I really appreciated that. And so I started thinking about what I want my kids to understand. So one of this whole Book of Dad thing, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start writing this stuff down. Whatever I think is interesting to me, a lesson, some technical thing. Like it started because I was at work and we were talking about electricity and trying to figure out wattage for power and all this other stuff that we're doing. And I'm like, I don't really know enough about that. I want to do some more research. I'm like, this is something I can have a conversation with my kids about, like down the road, like here's how you figure out how many watts you can get out of a plug. So I said, I'm going to start, and I got a little journal and I'm like, I'm going to write it down and I'm just going to do this book of dad where it's like everything I can think of that I think is important. And you can look at it, you could read it down the road. They can open it up and, it's like if I'm gone or I'm not, it'll be like, hey, I can look at this and say, here's how I know how to do wiring, or this was, a recipe that dad used to love, like, oh, this is his favorite recipe, or all that stuff, and just put it in a book and give it to them.
Sounds like a podcast.
Right.
Seriously, man.
Well,
sounds like a good dad hack too.
Yeah, so, well, that's
also a dad hack.
That's a dad hack.
Definitely sounds like a podcast.
It literally
Episode 1.
yeah.
We've just created.
How to figure out the wattage.
Yeah. It's true though, because my dad taught me a ton of shit that I didn't really take in. Because he was the same thing. It was like, this is how you do this. He'd pull me under the car and he was teaching me how to do all these things. And it's like, yeah, I was kind of paying attention, but I wasn't really taking it all in.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a ton. Yeah.
Like, I mean, I could do a lot of. I could do a lot.
In the moment, you don't care.
Yeah, it's like
Exactly.
this is an
And then we all
inconvenience.
kick ourselves in the ass for it later
absolutely.
in
Right.
life.
And it's like
it's
for
natural.
me too, it's like I can't call them up and go, hey, remember we were talking about that shit with the plumbing and this? It's like I can't do that. So this is my way of saying, not that I think I'm going to be gone by the time my kids are reading this, although I did the disclaimer. It's at the very first page. I'm like, if you're reading this, it's because I'm dead and your mother is probably to blame for this. And there's there's $100,000 in the ceiling above my bar. Yeah. And my wife was like, really? And I'm like, seriously, if I had $100,000, right, we wouldn't be here. But I was like, just, I want to make it funny too, but I'm just, those
I think
kind
it's
of
a
things.
great idea.
I think just have stuff that you can, and
that kind of stuff works.
Yeah.
There's a YouTuber out there. It's this guy.
I think I already know who you're talking about.
This guy who what was it? It's his dad wasn't around.
Right. And he taught himself how to do all this shit.
Himself how to do all this stuff, and he said, "Man, there's tons of kids out there who don't have their dads around."
Right.
Yep.
And it's called what? Dad, how do I? I think it is.
I don't know the name, but I know what
I
you're
think it's
talking
called
about.
Dad, how do I? And it's everything from changing out a hot water tank to changing oil to cleaning out gutters, whatever. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
And like, you can tell this dude's not doing it for money.
Right.
Like, he's not some big hot shot that's like, it's super well produced. He's just going out there and giving the content.
Right.
And it's so, I don't know, the word sounds corny, but it's wholesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I love that guy. Like, I want him to come on the podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, how many times have you gone, especially, this is the nice thing about the internet and all this shit. How many things have you learned on YouTube to fix?
So many things.
I have a YouTube certification for so many things.
Yeah.
It's like,
It's amazing.
it is.
Right.
It's incredible.
You look up
Yeah.
the model of whatever you're working on. You're like,
Right.
okay, I got to figure out how to take this apart.
Yeah.
Let's just go and type in this model of said snowblower.
Right.
Dude, I remember.
And how do I do this?
Right.
Like,
I remember my dryer took a shit.
Yeah.
And it was a belt around a drum, but I didn't know what it was.
Is
and
it
I'm
squeaking?
sitting
Because
there,
that's what mine's doing now.
it wasn't squeaking. It just wasn't turning.
Oh, no. This is.
It was like a front load, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, my first instinct was I Googled appliance repairman. And I called, and they're like, well, it's $150 to come out. And then, depending on parts and labor, I'm
Right.
like, fuck. So I started like YouTubing it, and I was like, holy shit. I went and bought like a $39
Yeah.
belt and learned how to take it apart
Right.
and
Yep.
put it back together, and it was perfect.
My washer.
Holy
I have a
shit.
front load washer.
yep.
And out of the blue, and it's always this is the scenario, and I hope my wife is listening to this, but she's probably not. I'm not home, and I come home to my wife going, I didn't do it. It just doesn't work. And I'm like,
It's the best.
bullshit.
Yeah, you did it.
Every
That's how you start the
time I'm not
conversation.
there, something breaks in this goddamn house. And there was a flood of water coming out of our and the bonnet that goes around the front of it tore.
Okay.
So it was leaking. So I'm like, fuck, now what am I going to do? So I'm like, all right, well, how much is this going to cost? And the same thing, it's like I could call a repairman, but I'm like, YouTube this shit.
Yep.
Looked it up, and I'm like, wait, if I spend $40 for this bonnet
Yeah.
and order it on Amazon, and it's here in 2 days, and this video is going to walk me through it. And sure as shit, I was done, and it saved me all that money to do it. But I think not just that, but also the fact that I think as a dad, it's like that whole thing of like, hey, I fucking fixed this.
Right.
You feel good about it.
Like, I am not an appliance
I
repairman.
am a man.
Listen,
I did this.
And I am call a guy.
Yeah.
That's me. Like, I'm so incredibly busy with the business and the podcast and spending time with my kids, whatever. I justify calling a guy all the time. But if there's something that I can do, I'm more than willing to do it, and I enjoy doing it because A, you're learning something, B, hopefully you're teaching your kids a lesson by actually.
Well, if you learn it, then you can show them.
Right. But just like having them around.
Oh, yeah.
Like, giving them a toy hammer or whatever while you're doing it. I think that there's value in that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's just good to learn something.
I mean,
right?
well, I had the heating element break in the on my dryer. And so naturally, I call my dad first. And I'm like, hey, what do you think? I'm like, there's no heat. It's not working. Expecting him to be like, here, do this, and this. Like he used to. He goes, he's like, go on YouTube. I'm like, thanks, Dad.
Dad.
Literally, though, he's like, I can come over there and help you, or I can walk you through this, or just go ahead and look it up.
No shit.
But sure enough, I did. I pulled the whole thing apart, which
They make it so miserable.
The amount of
to
screws
get to
you
that.
have, it's this little thing. It's
No
so easy.
shit.
It should be so easy to get to.
Yeah.
The only one
I had
that
to pull the whole fucking thing apart. You have to take the front off, you take the door off, remove
Yeah.
the entire thing.
the only appliance that I found that isn't a pain in the ass to repair anymore is a hot water tank. The heating element is literally in a panel. You take 4 screws
Yep.
off, and
Yeah.
it's
It's right there.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Want to hear something embarrassing that I did recently?
Yes.
So I hate putting this out there because my father-in-law told me how embarrassing I was after I told him what happened. I'm like, I got to start up the snowblower. I haven't used it yet. So I go to start it up and it doesn't start. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, I guarantee I just left the gas in there and carburetor's all gummed up. I'm gonna pull it apart. So I start doing that. Something my dad taught me when I was little, how to do that. So
You did check the gas.
So that's what happened. I start pulling it out. And I'm like, I remove everything, the heat shield, everything, start pulling it apart. And I'm about to unscrew the carburetor. And I'm like, oh shit, I got to make sure I got to check the gas and put something underneath so I don't get gas everywhere. Unscrew it. I'm like, oh my God, I bled it dry. I did the right thing last year and I bled it dry so I wouldn't have this problem. But I completely forgot that I did that.
Yep.
So
And my hands were frozen. It was like 2 degrees
Yeah.
outside. Needless to say, I was very happy.
Sure.
All I had to do was put those screws back in, and I was like, fill it up, and I'm good to go. One pull starts right up. I'm like,
That's
okay.
amazing, though.
you're-
You just assume.
Yeah, I'm like, son of a bitch. I screwed up again. I didn't winterize it.
and you're not going to
something.
tell anybody. You're just like, I fixed that shit.
Yeah.
Right.
But this time, I'm a man, all right? I pulled the carb apart. I was
Right.
I'm going to fix it. Filled up with gas.
So do your wives do the same that I do, where my wife will gauge how well the repair went by the amount of cussing or lack thereof. She's like, you weren't really swearing that
Yeah.
much. This must have been pretty good. I'm like, yeah, it was a good day.
Because I'll come upstairs and Liz will be like, all I heard was shit. Shit. Like, I just say shit a ton when things aren't going well. I come up,
Right.
I'm all sweaty.
My wife gauges it by how many times she asks me, should I call my dad? Like, no, don't call your dad.
No.
I got this.
And then finally I tuck tail. I'm like, maybe see if Bob can come
Yeah.
over.
So I actually, we had, at my old house, we had a furnace that was older than I was. And you literally had to like tape the door shut to seal to make sure it ran.
Right.
Had the whole thing worked out. And I'm at work and Jody calls and she's like, furnace stopped working. I'm like, okay, did you do this? She's like, yeah, it's not working. I'm like, okay, well, I'll fix it when I come home because I know why it's doing this. I can tell you. She's like, no, I'm going to call my dad. I'm like, don't call your dad. Just do this first. She's like, well, my dad's already on the way. I'm like, so you just called your dad.
Right.
So then I hear him in the background because they lived across the street at that time. He's like, yeah, it's fucked. I'm like, so literally, let me just walk you through what you got to do. He's like, no, it's not going to work. He's like, you're, and he's like, everyone's going to come stay at our house tonight because I worked nights at that point. Like, all right, I said, so at 7 o'clock in the morning when I'm home, I'll call you guys and let you know what worked, right? And they're like, no, I got a furnace guy. I'll call him tomorrow. You'll be fine. So I got home and I'm like, here we go. Panel, slid it in, fixed it up, started right up. Everything was great. Got on the phone. I shit you not. I call on. I'm
So
like,
happy to
had
make
it on
that phone
speaker.
call.
I'm like,
Oh,
can
it's
you
the best
hear it
feeling.
running? Can you hear it? And they're like, what'd you do? And I'm like, exactly the goddamn thing I told you to do. So then I was like, all right, this is good.
wonderful.
Yep, I'm a man.
Right.
I know what I'm doing here.
I'm gonna go run outside with my shirt off. And
I'm gonna go cook a steak.
Anybody want to toss a football around for a little bit?
Where's my whiskey?
Yeah. A couple weeks ago, I was going to bed and I was going to go turn down the furnace because I like it nice and cool when I'm sleeping.
Sure.
As you should.
I'm like, shit, this is at 70 degrees. It says 67. I'm like, that's weird because it's definitely not.
Right.
Furnace isn't working. And it's midnight. I'm like, son of a bitch. It's like 2 degrees outside. Liz is like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing. I'm going to go work on the furnace. I go downstairs and I'm looking around. I start pulling it apart. And I'm like, the little switch on the side. The kids were down there.
Yeah.
They just turned it off.
Right.
I was like, thank God.
Fixed it.
But I came upstairs. I'm like, oh,
Jesus Christ.
you should have seen what I had to do down there.
You start throwing out terms like manifold. And
He's rubbing oil and shit on his face. Just
Don't worry about it. All right. I took care of
down there
it. All you need to know is I
having
took
a
care
couple
of it.
beers.
Yeah.
Right. I did this for you.
Yeah.
It's good now.
Had to pull off the rotator cuff on the manifold.
Throw your rag over your shoulder. It's good now.
Everything's fine.
Capacitor. I fixed that
Yeah,
too.
everything's
simple
fine
orange
now.
hat.
We're good for a few more years.
Where's
Don't worry.
the simple orange at?
Hands are destroyed
You
here.
need pumice. You goddamn need pumice.
Yeah, no, in reality, we just, flip the
Right.
switch.
You were sitting on your ass for 5 minutes going, just give it 5 more minutes. It'll sound better this way.
I love when a project like that starts and you just sit there and stare at it for like 20 minutes before you do
It's
anything. Just like
mandatory.
you stare at it like, where do I start?
So last year, and this usually starts with my wife going, hey, what do you think? And I'm like, God,
Oh, yeah.
it's not a good idea. So it was like, what do you think about getting the kids a play set? And I'm like, all right, whatever. Let's, and then we started looking at pricing and I'm like, Jesus Christ, I will go chop down the tree
Outrageous.
myself. We found one that was fine. And then she's like, all right, the boxes will be here. I'm like, okay. And I didn't realize they were 8 foot long, 4 of them. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna go set these out, in the backyard, whatever. And it took me a day just to separate all the wood.
Right.
Yeah, then all the bolts
And
that
I'm
come with it,
looking at-
everything.
right, and there's bags, and I'm like, what the fuck? So, but there was actually a website. They give you a site, and it's like an instruction book. It's like an animated
Oh, nice.
website that goes with it that shows you how to do some of the stuff. But it was that thing, and then I get everybody like, oh, I'll just wait till the weekend. I'll help you. And I'm like, no, I'll just start working on it, whatever. And then it took me 3 days of basically like 10-hour days. I had the week off, and I was like 3 days of 10-hour days. But at that point, I think at some point I was like, fuck it, I'm doing this. And I'm going to brag about this shit when
Right.
I'm
Oh,
done
yeah.
Right.
to everybody that's looking at like, yeah, this is pretty good. I'm like, yeah, it took me. This is a 10-hour day. Like everybody coming like, I'll come help it. I'm like, no, I got this. I got it.
Yep, because you're like, now I have to.
Yeah.
Here's a dad hack related to play sets. Go on Facebook Marketplace, go on Craigslist, whatever. People give those away.
I bought mine for $50, and Ian
bought
helped me.
2 of them.
We went and picked that one up. It was
Yeah.
Ian, myself, and Arco. Brought it to my house. It was like,
And what
what,
did we
3
do?
pieces.
What did we do? We sat there and we looked at him like, all right, how can we disassemble this in the least intrusive way so that we can actually put it back together?
Right.
And it took us
But-
an hour to put it back
yeah.
together. Like, I mean, the trip there, take it apart,
Yeah.
take it to my house, put it up, and
Some questionable strappage going on.
oh my god, moving his
Oh, yeah.
from his old house to it's at where the daycare right now.
Yeah.
You should see. There's a video.
When we sold my house, the homeowner, the buyers were very adamant that we remove this playset. And like I was totally fine with just leaving it there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's
at
all
that point,
yours. It's a
You
selling
take care
point
of
at
it,
this
and
point.
we had just refinished it too. Like we stripped it down
Yeah.
and sealed it and painted it and all this kind of stuff. Whatever. But no, they wanted it gone. So I was like, all right, fine. So I'm like, hey Steve, let's take this bad boy apart. He's like, yeah, absolutely, I'll be over.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So he comes over and we did the 20 minutes staring
Yep.
at it.
Of course.
And I had my trailer. It's a pretty big play set. There's what, 3 swings, a
Yeah, the
slide,
big-ass slide,
the
and
big
the-
like clubhouse thing, and whatever. It's good size.
Right.
So I have my trailer, and have it in the backyard, and we're just kind of staring at it, and we finally get into we can put it back together pretty quickly.
Right.
And
Well, first of all, we tried to take the ladder off, and the one screw was completely and the bolt was completely
yeah.
stripped. And we're like,
Yeah.
screw it, keep this whole part together. We're like, Ian's like, we can fit this in there. I'm like, absolutely. It was jamming in there.
This won't be a problem.
So it ends up like we have it on the trailer, and we start to strap it down, and Chelsea's like, "That's pretty tall." I'm like, "Yeah." I mean, it's freaking
It is tall.
And so what do? We
Googled how tall
how
a tractor trailer is.
Yeah.
And we were under by a foot.
Yeah, we were under by a foot, so like we should be fine on all the bridges.
Oh my God.
That shit was scary.
And it was terrifying. The best part is we
He
strapped it
got a
down.
video.
I took a video. I'm behind him. Because we were going 40 on
Route 2.
On 2. Yeah. I'm like, here comes the bridge, and I start slowing down. I'm like, this thing's hitting.
I'm sitting there ducking.
And I'm looking at this thing. You watch the video of this thing going under the bridge, and it looks like it's gonna crush it. It made it. It was
I
fine.
can't believe it made
What was
it.
that
Two
movie?
straps came undone.
We're doing the strap test. Yeah, I ain't going nowhere.
I call him. Yeah, literally, and just sitting there waiting for me to say that too. I said, I'm like, it's not going anywhere. He just starts dying. I'm like, what? He's like, you said it. I flicked it too. Like, do the little pop it.
Yeah.
It's not going
There was
anywhere.
like 12 straps on that thing. We only lost 2, so.
Well, it's flapping in the wind. We're on the freeway. I'm like, we lost the strap. He's like, should I stop? I'm like, just keep going, man. We're halfway there.
Past the point of no return.
You can't stop now. It's just
You got a line of cars behind us on the freeway. I'm like, just go, man.
So bad.
Needless to say, we got it.
Yeah,
We made it.
of course you did.
And it was very easy.
It wasn't bad at all.
Putting it back together won't be bad.
No.
Mine's still together. The thing is a little shaky.
Yeah, we got to beef that up this spring, I think.
It's all right, though. I mean, I painted it.
Yeah, it looks great.
Put a roof on it because I had some extra
Yeah.
shingles from the roof because we just got the roof done. Looks nice.
It'll be nice.
Kids love it.
Yeah, I was
It does the
loving
trick.
it.
I told Liz, I'm like, if we get a couple years out of this and then we move,
But seriously,
I spent $50
you
on
can
it.
go on Craigslist or something like that. I don't know, not Craigslist, but
like, yeah, Facebook.
Facebook
long as nobody
Marketplace,
kills you.
whatever.
Yeah.
Right. But like in the area, you'll find people all the time.
yeah.
Like, hey, give me $100.
Well, we sold it. And that's what my wife will be like. I'm like, all right, we're done with this. She's like, hold on, don't get rid of it. I'll try to sell it on Facebook. And I'm like,
right.
whatever, just go ahead, do it. That's fine.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I always think it's funny when you do you're going through and you're like at the tail end of the build and you're like realizing that maybe you have more hardware than you thought you would have at that point.
That's
And
the
you're like,
worst.
Shit.
So it's always either there's too much or not enough.
Right.
Like it never works out just
Or
right.
you're doing stuff and you realize like halfway and you're like, fuck, I used the wrong bolts for this.
Yeah.
That's why they're sticking out. And can I get away with it? No,
I can cut these ones down.
No one's going to hit their head on that part. That's not a big deal.
I know, like that's the IKEA thing. Like I know when we first had our kids, we went out and got a bunch of IKEA furniture.
Yeah.
It's like bookcases and dressers and stuff like that. Like we're just gonna do it now and be done with it. And God, just like setting it all out and like they're such small packages, and you get your knife out, and you get it open, and then there's just so many pieces.
Right.
You're like, fuck.
Yeah, I don't, I always try to figure that out because I always I'm like, oh, I'd love to build furniture, just say I did it. And I actually built a bed.
Yeah.
Well, so this is that whole, it's a guy thing. So, I got through nursing school and I was pretty proud of that. But at the same time, I was like, all right, I'm a nurse. Mm-hmm. So then I felt like I had to do something, and it's totally masculine to like counterbalance the fact that I'm a nurse. So I'm like, fuck it, I'll just build a bed. So I bought all these books and stuff to like, building stuff with 2x4s, and it worked out pretty good, and it lasted for a few years. But it was one of those things where it was like, you're looking at it, you're like, this won't be that bad, and then you get like halfway, and you're like, well, I can't stop now because I'm halfway in, but this is a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And then you start going, it's not going to look exactly like that, but I'm okay with that at this point because
I need to get it done. Yeah. My father-in-law, for both my kids' second birthdays, built them these incredible beds.
Yeah.
So my wife, bless her soul, she finds these things, and so she found this like clubhouse bed, and it was from some, I don't even know what brand.
Right.
But the MSRP on it was like $6,000. I'm like, yeah, guess what? That ain't happening.
Yeah.
God. Gold mine. So, I mean, my wife and her sister are very much like, okay, well, my dad will build it. And he will. Like, he's amazing.
Right.
He is incredible at that stuff. And so for both of their second birthdays, he built these beds. And Gibbs's is like kind of masculine. It's like almost like a clubhouse with like a roof on it, and like there's windows, and it's really cool. And then my daughter's it's got like dormers on it and like a shingled roof and like flower boxes and stuff like it. I mean, they're amazing. And you know, I never really put much thought into it. Like, it was very cool, and I had to help him. Like, he built it in his basement. Like, he's got like a workshop, so he built them, and then we had to take them apart and then bring them over to my house and then put them back together. And when we moved, I was just like, so I don't remember how to take these things apart, and where the fuck are we gonna?
I didn't even think about that at all.
Oh, dude, it was a pain.
Are they in storage?
Yeah, they're in storage.
I just don't remember seeing them. You moved that before I got there. Oh, the movers moved that?
No, me and Bob did it. Like, because I was like, dude, you have to come over here. I don't know how to take these things apart without destroying them.
I'm so glad you hired movers this time.
Oh yeah,
just because this guy moves more than anybody.
I do move a lot.
I've moved him so many times.
It's true.
This is the first time I haven't had to move his safe, and I was just so happy. I was so happy.
I'll be moving again soon.
Yeah.
We can if you're
so
really
I hurt my
it.
knee again, and after I almost got my finger torn off the
That
first
was
time
an
you get the
accident.
safe.
That
I
was an
said
accident.
stop. You guys look go perfect.
I heard go.
I'll blame Marco for that.
So,
Yeah, that's true.
You were talking. Actually, that made me think about. You were talking about like your wife saying, "Well, my dad will do it."
Mm-hmm.
Is there? So my father-in-law is will do absolutely anything for his kids.
Yeah.
Right. And now that he has in-laws, same thing, and his grandkids, same thing. To the point of almost at a fault, where it's like some people, you almost feel like sometimes he's being taken advantage of.
Sure.
But he's always that type of. He's like, "Yeah, I'll do it. I love it," and then he's like, "Oh my God, I got to do this and this." I'm like, "You volunteered for this shit, so
Right,
you
right.
can't complain about it."
You said you'd do it.
But that's my wife's go-to, and she's like, "Well, I'll just get my dad to do it." And I don't know if she's saying that because it's like, I know he'll do it, or it's like, I'm gonna make you feel like shit because you're gonna now I'll make you do it because you don't want to have me. So I'm kind of coming to that. I've come to a place where I feel comfortable with if it's like, yeah, well, my dad will come over and help you with the shrubs. I'm like, fuck it, I don't care because I hate landscaping. Yeah. But if it's other stuff, I'm like, I'll take care of it.
Yeah, it's a weird dynamic because you're right. Like, I remember when we first got married, it was, I am mad.
Yeah.
I am
Right.
going to do. I can remember it was Christmas Day. It was the first time that we were ever going to host an event as a married couple.
Right.
And so there's no kids involved. It's very basic. Like,
Right.
they were coming over for, like, I think it was like actually Christmas brunch or something like that. Like, it wasn't even like the actual Christmas dinner. They were just coming over. And, so we were getting the house ready and all that. And everyone's over and just kind of hanging out, talking. And my sink just like explodes out of nowhere. Like, all of the plumbing is just torn apart. And like I don't even know how it happened. Like, we were doing nothing with that particular appliance, and everything was just gone. And he's just kind of looking at me. He's like, "You need a hand?" I'm like, "Yeah, I guess so."
Yeah, at this point,
I'm sweating right now, and like I would much rather be able to YouTube this in peace. You just go ahead and give me
He saw
a
you
hand.
doing the 20-minute stare before you were actually get into it.
Got the hands on the hips, taking a deep breath.
But then there's sometimes that it's just like, no, you don't need to call your dad for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't love your dad.
Right.
It's not that I
That's
don't
exactly right.
appreciate his help. But I think it's my house. Let me give it a shot.
Yeah, my dad was like, again, that was his thing. Like, he just did, and he worked for the phone company, so it wasn't like he was like all knowing on all these things. It was just he just learned how to do it because I think a lot of it was that's what his dad made him do.
Yeah.
And he figured out that's what he had to do.
that
It's like
era.
yeah, exactly. So I learned, and my brothers and sisters, we all were part of the projects.
Right.
So I was always like, that was my thing. Like, let me take a look at it first, and I'll let you know if we need to call anybody. Give me the chance to kind of work it through.
Right.
And it wasn't always about And that's like Jody, her first thing is, let me call my dad. I'm like, no, just give me a second. But my dad, he made it a point as we were growing up to say, you're going to learn how to do this. Even if you never have to do it.
Right.
Just learn how to do it.
Well, having some basic remembrance of that situation is so vital.
It for sure is, because my dad will do, because I'll call him.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, give me an idea.
Right.
He'll be like, try it, everything you can. He's like, and if you can't do it, then I'll come over.
Right.
So then I have to try to do it.
Well, that's...
And I don't know if it's the point where like he did most of the stuff, because my brothers had their houses before I did.
Yeah.
So I think maybe he got burnt out from helping them out all the time. But we're all pretty good at fixing things. Like that's how he taught us. Like we grew up, same thing. We were always working on stuff with him.
Yeah.
So we remembered a lot of it. But at the same time, he's like, just figure it out.
Well,
and then he's like, if you can't do it, then I'll come help you.
And I think that was my dad's approach. It was, I want you to try it. And if you can't do it, you can't do it.
Right.
But at least try. And that's what, like, with my kids, like, sometimes my wife is she's a mom, so she just wants to do it for him. And I'm like, no, just let him try. And I'm like, you can do it. And my son he's like, I can't do it. I'm like, just try it. And then he'll do it, and he'll be like, so excited. I'm like, see? Like, look what happened when you tried it and you did it. Like, if you wouldn't have done it, it wouldn't have been a problem. We would have figured it out. But, like, you did it on your own.
My daughter the other night, I was like, all right, honey, go upstairs and get your jammies on.
Yeah.
I'm going to go take the dog out. Go get your jammies on, then we'll do bedtime. She's like, okay. She runs upstairs, and, I come back in from taking the dog out, and she's, like, crying. She's like, I can't get my shirt off or whatever. And I'm like, okay, it's okay. Like, I'll help you now.
Yeah.
And then I, like, just nudged, to get her shoulder out from where it was. And I was like, all right, now you do it. And she did it. And she was like, I did it. And I'm like, see? Like, how good does that feel, And, I think that's repetition, of course, just like anything else.
Yeah.
But, yeah, getting the kids to do something on their own can feel cold to the other partner.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we could very easily just
because you could be like, just let me do it.
Right.
Like, Sam doesn't let me do anything anymore to help him.
That's good.
Probably because I helped him so much all the time. And it's like, he'll just slap my hand away. I'm like, oh, if you just let me finish this for you, we'll be done. But you're right.
Good though.
Right.
He needs to do it. So and then you're right. Then he feels so good about himself when he's done. He's like, look what I did.
Right.
And he's so proud of himself. And it's like, that's what I just need to do all the time.
But going back to like your question, I think Steve kind of said it. I know I've said it. And you said that you don't have the opportunity to, but our first reaction would be to call our dads.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's unrealistic that that's their first reaction.
Well, and I think too, as a female, and this is not an indictment of a female, but I think as a female, wouldn't, like, especially because I know the dynamic with my father-in-law, my wife. It was, he was dad who was always there for his kids, and to a fault, like I said, to a fault, he was a great dad. He still is, but I think he just was always about, I will help you and take care of you as much as I can.
Yeah.
And so they grew up knowing that that was their net. And that was part of her adjustment, was having to go, I know I don't have to call my dad all the time. And when my wife got to the point where she could just start to say, hey, let's do this. Like, there'll be times where she's like, hey, I fixed this. And like, she's walking me through it. And I'm like, good job.
Yeah.
There you go.
Great.
Great. Like, that's, and I'm like, see? Like, I'm
You didn't
talking to my kid.
have to
I'm like,
call your
see
dad.
how good you
can
are.
do it.
Come here.
And
High
she-
five.
right.
But that's also so again, like, your wife will call her dad.
Yeah.
If you had the opportunity, you would call your
And I
dad
still-
to fix
absolutely.
something.
For sure.
But the difference is that and I haven't met anyone that doesn't do it, and it's not for any other reason than if you have a daughter, you just think that you need to help them more.
Right.
I don't know. It's like, it's my little girl.
Right.
So like the other day when Sloan was trying to get her jammies on, I had to really think about it and make her try.
Yeah.
If it was my son,
Yeah.
I would have
Absolutely.
sat there and looked at him
Right.
struggle for
Yes.
20 minutes
Yeah.
and
Yes.
said, figure it out,
Right.
figure it
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
And he would eventually got it.
Right.
And I would have
Yeah.
given the same lesson, but I would have been much more strict with him.
Yeah.
And I'm not proud of that. It's just, it's natural. That's just what it is.
yeah.
So I think for them to call, for our wives to just call their dads, or that be their first instinct, is completely natural.
Right.
And it's just something that we have to deal with.
Yeah, and I think again, when I think I've gotten over the fact, and my ego and whatever has gotten over the fact that it's not my wife going, I'm just going to call
It's
my
not that
dad.
you
Yeah,
suck.
you can't do it.
It's
that this person is
right.
always
and
come
there's
through for
times
me.
where she'll be like, can you just have my dad come over and help you? Not because she knows I need help, but because it's a reason for us to get together. It's a reason for him to come over. He feels useful when there's times where because we're all growing up and don't need him. That I think, and I know I'm gonna go through this too, where I'm gonna feel like I just want to come over to feel like I'm still in the mix, right?
Right.
And I have to remind myself of that because I know even if my father was still alive, I'd have to do that, but still remind myself of. Just sometimes it's just about getting them involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, he can just stand there and watch you do it,
Right.
and be like, "Hey, maybe
What do you
try
think
this."
about this?
Yeah,
Right.
Dude, we've done stuff before. Actually, the playset that we were talking about, when we were refinishing it, the slide was kind of beat up.
Yeah.
It was fine.
Right.
It was totally fine. But Chelsea was like, "Hey, let's call my grandpa. He's literally doing nothing, and he's a body man he still is.
Yeah.
Like he works on cars, and he can do some crazy shit with a quarter panel and like make it look brand new. And like this slide, it's a fiberglass slide. So we called him, and he came over, or actually I took it over there, and he's like, "All right, come back in a week," and he called me like 3 days later. It was wonderful, and it gave him something to do.
and
Did it need
I
fixed?
guarantee he loved
No.
it.
Yeah.
It didn't need like crazy, it was fine.
Right.
But like he had a good time doing it, and it gave us an excuse to go over there twice. I went
Right.
over there, dropped it off. We hung out for a little bit, had a beer.
Yeah.
Then we went and picked it up, and he walked me through what he did, and like
Right.
that was amazing. So
Yeah, one of my dad's favorite stories when and I was actually there for it, was so my sister called him and she's like, "Hey, the floodlight in our front yard isn't working." He's like, "All right." He's like, "Did you try this?" And he's like running her through it. And she's like, "Yeah, we're and it's my brother-in-law. And he's not like lazy. He was trying to help too. So we're there between the two of them trying to figure it out, and they couldn't figure it out. So he's like, "All right." He's like, "Well, I'll come over because we're gonna be running out." So I was in the car with him, and we're driving down the street, and he almost like ran off the side of the road because he was laughing so hard. And I realized it was because my sister was on the ladder with the tool, like with the screwdriver, like playing with, and my brother-in-law was at the bottom of the ladder holding stuff. And he's like, I couldn't be more proud of him.
Yeah, I was gonna say he had to feel so good about that.
And it wasn't an indictment on my brother. It was just
Right.
my daughter's doing it.
Yeah,
It's like
sure.
like if I did that,
Yeah.
it's like that was
Hell yeah.
a proud dad moment. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I get that. I understand it.
yeah,
For sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that's amazing, right? Like our number one job is to make sure that our kids can be self-sufficient.
Yep.
And like, if you can make them good people, that's icing, I
Right.
guess. Like that's also a priority, but
Right.
like at the end of the day, you want to make sure that they're self-sufficient.
Sure.
And if you can teach them to figure things out on their own,
Right.
even when it's the harder thing to do, because it is at 10 o'clock at night and bedtime was 2 hours ago and they've just been messed up and you can't get them to do anything on time.
Right.
You're already late, whatever. Those are the moments that I think are probably the most crucial to teach that lesson. Like, you need to do this.
Right.
You want a cup of milk? Like, you are old enough now that you can pour your own cup of milk. Let's go
Right.
do this. Not, well, just get your ass in bed. Because I do this all the time. I'm like, get your ass in bed.
Mm-hmm.
I will go get you milk. And that's like, in my head, that's a motivator for them to get in bed.
Right.
But in reality, if I get them to go do it, then maybe next time it'll be a little bit earlier that they'll just go and do it.
Right.
And
Because it's so easy to be like, go do. I'll take care of all this.
Right.
Just get into bed. So I have my free time after this. Let's just get this over with, so we're done with it.
Yeah.
right.
Or have them do it themselves. Sure, it might take longer, but you're right though. Somewhere down the road, it's gonna make things a lot easier.
Right. Right.
And I have to say something about what because I had to go pee. I'll be honest. I heard you talking about having to do putting the flower bed together,
Yeah.
and doing all that kind of stuff. Do you remember when I was gonna do the patio?
Yeah.
And I was gonna do the pavers.
Yeah.
And I bought all the wood for the outline of it and everything. I brought all these pavers and I dug it all out.
Right.
I did everything. I mean, I dug this shit out. It took me forever. It was a nightmare. And then I finally was like, you know what would be a lot better back here? Stamped concrete.
You know
So I
why,
called it-
though? is because you went and did your mom's patio.
Yes.
And that was amazing. It turned out amazing.
Oh, it turned out great. I felt really good about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I made this whole fire pit for her and all that. I mean, it was great. So I bought all this stuff and I did everything I had to do, all the prep work.
How many trips to Lowe's did we make to like pick up the pavers?
Oh my God!
And then
it was
take them. Didn't we have to take them back?
So what happened?
And then we got them back again, and then they
so
had to come pick them up.
There was broken ones, and then so they ended up sitting there for a while. The pavers.
We made a couple trips.
You did. That was for the fence too.
Oh, that was for the fence.
Yes,
too.
the fence was. Ugh, that was a nightmare.
It wasn't.
But
it
sucked. I mean, it worked out. It was fun. It was fun. It was fun, right? We had a good time.
Yeah.
I think the worst part was doing
time.
the holes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
God, that was a nightmare. But I had these pavers, so I ended up getting stamped concrete, which it made it a lot easier because everything was already prepped.
And it looks amazing.
Those guys were like, this is phenomenal. All we do is put the cement in.
Right.
So going back to the Craigslist thing and everything, I ended up selling those pavers like a year later because they sat in my driveway for 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I ended up making some money off of it, but I mean, not what I paid for them.
Right.
But stamped concrete looks phenomenal. But those pavers, though, they just sat there for years and Liz was like, can we just get rid of those things? I'm like, I have nowhere to take them.
Dude,
I tried to return them to Lowe's, and they're like, they've been there for a few years.
And like Steve said, he's helped me
We didn't
move so
sell
many
those
times.
anymore.
Anytime we've ever done any kind of project, Steve's always there for me. And so there's no hesitation. Like, hey, I'm doing a project or whatever.
Right.
Yep, be over there.
Yeah.
I always have the truck too. So
Yep.
it's just like, all right, so I'll go there. And I remember him talking about this project. And I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds amazing. It's going to look great. Go over there all excited. And I see all the work that he's done to dig it out. We go to pick up these pavers. And, like, there's just forklifts. and like, luckily, he lives right there. But, like, we made a couple different trips back and forth. And I'm like, dude, I am not looking forward to placing these pavers.
No. Because I looked at what it took. Because I'm like,
concrete would be amazing.
yeah, that'd be a great idea. Sure, it's going to cost a little bit, but
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that whole project, it turned out great. It looks phenomenal back there
amazing.
but the fence, it's another project. But we did that.
And that turned out
We
great.
did great.
Too. Yeah.
I mean, it sucked.
Yeah, it did.
It sucked.
It did.
Yeah, those were fun times though. That was that before kids? No, I think Sam was around. No, we had the fence up. The patio was
Patio was after kids.
yeah, because Ben was in the hospital
The
or
fence-
he was in the hospital that summer.
I don't remember.
Well, you said you've gotten Steve, you've gotten your son involved. Like he'll grab tools and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
right? Is that the same with?
No.
See,
No.
mine. I tried to change the oil. Oh, I did change the oil on my truck, and I'm like, "Come on, we're gonna go learn how to do it." It's like, "Oh, yeah, it's great." And we sat down. Like 5 minutes later, he's like, "You know, I'm gonna go inside."
Yeah.
Like, all right. And I'm trying to wrestle with that thing about. I want him to do stuff, but at the same time, not taking it personally when he does.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line between forcing your kids and allowing them when they want to.
I think because naturally the kids are going to get excited about it at first.
Right.
Then they realize how boring it is.
Yeah.
No, Sam will stick around for a while when it comes to like saying like maybe like building a dress or like a shelf or something, right?
Right.
But like working on the car or something. He'll be out there for like a half hour. He's got his tools, and I'm like, here's just nail this in. But then it's like you're kind of in the way a little bit. Just move over to the side and just watch. And then he's like, okay, I'm done. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think they're still young,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
I don't know when I started like really working on the car with my dad. I don't know
Well,
how
that's
old
what I was trying
I was.
to remember when it was the point when I felt like I was an indentured servant to my dad, where it was like I was just going from just carrying shit to actually doing the work, and what age that was when. So I definitely wasn't 5 or 6 like my son is. So I'm like, all right,
Yeah, it's like you can't really get frustrated with him yet. I don't think.
no,
It's like those memes where it shows like the dad like flipping out, and it's like me holding the light,
The light,
in the
yeah.
right
Yeah.
place.
right.
Well, I'll never forget.
right here. Like, oh Jesus. That was my biggest fear when I was a kid. Like the flashlight wasn't in the right spot. My
Yeah.
dad was gonna lose it.
Yep. You're like, he's like, move it over there. You're like, ah.
I don't even know what I'm looking at.
That's actually a pretty tough job if we're going to be honest about it.
hold the light still.
It's not,
Where?
You don't have their point of view.
Right.
Like, it's very difficult to shine a light somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm making a joke, but it's actually true. Like,
It is.
if you're telling me that you need to look at something, like, I can't see what you're seeing.
Right.
You got to guide me.
Yeah. And I don't know what you're talking about. He
Right.
said he throws the name out there. Hold it under
We
there.
gotta
It's like
walk through this first. Show me
you're like, but
exactly
where
before
is
we get into the work.
Where is
Well,
that?
Point to it.
Where is that located? Because the words you just said are Chinese. I just don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Hold it under the flux capacitor.
Where is that? Right there, damn it.
It's a tough thing because, like, you don't want to turn into hold the flashlight guy.
Yeah.
Because that comes with the notion that, like, you just feel like an asshole holding a flashlight.
Yeah.
Right? And so you don't want to make your kids do that. On the other hand, you don't want them to just think that everything's done for you. So it is tough. I don't know. Like, and again, not being a super handy guy, I'll fix things that I have the ability to, but if I don't, it's not necessarily worth my time to. In some situations it is, but most of the time I'm calling somebody, and I'm not necessarily calling a service. I'll usually call like Steve, or I'll call Arco, or
Yeah,
Harry,
just call a friend
like,
and come up.
somebody that I know has
Right.
experience with. I'm like, hey, I need a hand with something.
Right.
And that hand usually means that I'm like, remember, I had our friend Harry. He's amazing.
Which, by the way, is one of the hardest things to do, framing a door like that.
Yeah. So I had a side entry door, and it had it was elevated off of the driveway.
Right.
And so the door needed to be replaced. So I go and buy a door, and the door doesn't fit. So I'm like, oh fuck, what do I do now? We had to basically build it up. Like it was just an odd size. Like the original door was larger than what a standard door
Right.
is. So we had to build it up so that it would fit right.
Right.
And so we had to like build a mold and basically pour concrete in order to make it work. And or no, we didn't even have to do that.
No.
We thought
No, we were told.
So
we were
Harry
told
goes,
to mix concrete.
hey, go take that wheelbarrow over there and start mixing up some concrete for me. I'll be ready for it soon. So me and Steve are over there, and we were what, like 25, 24,
Yeah,
something
something
like
like
that. And like he was already a master of trades. Like
So we didn't really have to do
didn't
anything.
really-
We knew that. We knew we didn't have to do anything. We just.
I didn't.
I mean, I thought he's like, go grab this tool. Like we were
Me
we're
and
gophers.
Steve were over there like smoking cigs, drinking beers, and just literally mixing concrete for an hour.
Just drawing dicks in it and stuff.
We're drawing dicks in the concrete.
Just cracking up like a bunch of little girls. Like,
Meanwhile, Harry fixes the whole damn thing, and we're like, all right, we're ready. He was like, yeah, we don't really need that.
It's like dad's boiling water.
We're
for
like,
the
yeah, like literally,
Exactly.
like
keep yourself fucking busy.
exactly.
We're
He's
like,
like, get out of my way. You guys are just in the way. Just keep the kids busy.
It was amazing.
Well, and so I still think that because I have a couple friends that are not handy in the slightest, and I still go back to even though I don't have that master craftsman knowledge, just the what I do know, and because of the way that my dad wanted me to get involved, I still feel better than when you walk through some of these situations with some of these guys and you're looking at me like you don't even know the difference between screwdrivers or like just like that's
Yes,
not
yes.
form amount of knowledge,
Right.
and and not even try. Like I wrestle with not being too judgmental about people who are just like, I don't care.
Right.
I'll hire somebody, and it's like, don't you even want to know how to do this?
Yeah.
Like learn.
Yeah.
Like that's like So
I remember like we were going to a bar one time, and one of the guys had a flat tire, and we were already there. And we're like, oh, I got a flat. I'm just gonna call a tow truck. It's like,
yeah.
dude, I'll be there. Just
Right.
Yeah.
so I go and change the tire. They're like, oh man, like I'm just like, here's
I
where
should-
this is located.
Yeah.
This is what you do. I'm like, here, try to. I'm like telling them, like, here, try to break it. Like, try to do it yourself. Like, see, there you go.
Yeah.
And it's funny though, because some people just can't even change a tire.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's
those
very
are
simple.
Skills that you should have. I mean, as much as I like bash myself because I am call a guy person.
But you know
I
enough.
can do the basics.
You know enough.
I and it's not a foreign language to me, and I do try and pay attention when somebody's doing it, so that if I run it, because you inevitably run into the situation
Sure.
again. But I had a point there.
Well, I was talking about changing a tire for someone that didn't know how to do it. And
It was some. So with your kids, like that's what it was. So I do worry sometimes that I jump to call a guy quicker than I used to.
Right.
And I don't know if it's financial or if it's just don't want to mess with it.
Well,
And sometimes I do wonder, like, what example am I setting? Because even though I think in my head, like, I do, like, cost benefit, like,
sure.
ratios all the time in my head. I'm like, all right, it's going to take me, like, 6 hours to do this. What
What's my time worth?
What could I really be doing?
Yeah.
You know, and I justify it that way. But on the other end of it, like my son, who's going to be 6 this year, it's like, okay, do I want his first reaction to be call a guy?
Right.
Or should I say, hey, let's diagnose this, let's figure it out, call for help if we need it?
Yeah.
Because I do believe that, especially at that age, they're learning more from watching than doing.
Yeah.
Right. So if they run into a situation where they're just going to call a guy, like, okay, well, hopefully you're fortunate enough and smart enough that you've gotten a good job that you can do that kind of
Right.
stuff, but you should still know the basics.
Yeah. My grandfather on my mom's side was he had, so if he needed a tool and didn't have it, he would make it. Like this is like I literally, when I was a kid, would go in his basement and it was like me, just like it was like a shop where I could run around. I'm like, this is, and he would just let me look, like just play around with it. And I learned so much about cool tools and stuff. And I'm like, what is this? And he's like, oh, I made that for that. And it was one job, but it's still. So he had my mom, my aunt, and my uncle. And my mom learned how to do some of this stuff because she did some of the stuff for so my uncle was, his mentality was always, I'm just going to make enough money that I'm going to pay somebody to do it. And he did it. Like he went to school, got a really good job, made a lot of money, and just did that.
Right.
He stuck to it and whatever. And like he lived by that. Like, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it. And no one faulted him for it. And he didn't look any differently than other people. He's like, I just don't want to learn how to do it. And and it was like, that was like, okay, cool, I get it. But you know, like my dad was the kind of person that was just like, I just want to teach you guys all how to do it. And if you don't use it, you don't use it, but you have the knowledge to do it. And better to have that.
Well, and knowing the basics, what I would say now is, okay, great. You're in a situation where you can call a repair guy.
Yeah.
Having the basic knowledge at least lets you know whether or not you're getting hosed.
Right.
Right.
True.
True. Like when this guy's sitting there talking about, well, we really got to do this or that. And you're like,
Yeah.
this
kinda
doesn't
not
really make sense. Like from what I understand, like, and that's what helps me now.
For sure, that can
And
save
I've
you a ton of
actually
money.
called somebody out on that before at the daycares, like something. What was it? It was a roofing problem, and it's like, well, see what happened here is you got 6 layers of shingles. I'm like, I see 2.
Yeah.
He's like, well, you know, these ones. No, I see 2, bro. Like, he's like, well, to get to code, I'm like, all right, well.
Well, and that's it. I had our hot water tank went in our house, and we had a 75-gallon hot water tank.
That's a big boy, yeah.
Yeah, it is. And it didn't just all of a sudden go. Like I just walked down there one day and I noticed there was a puddle right by the tank. And I'm like, this isn't supposed to be there. And so I called my buddy who's a plumber, and he, in my old house, he replaced the tank. And I'm like, hey, what's going on with this? And he's like, well, he walked me through, feel the insulation, and you have a leak.
Wet, yeah.
You're going to need it replaced. I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm like, I'm not going to do this, so I'm going to pay you to do this. All right. I knew my limitations and came in and put in a new tank. And a couple days later, I'm looking at it, I'm like, there's a lot of water like at the bottom of the tank. Like for a new tank, I don't know. And he's like, oh, it's probably just the water that was just, under the tank or whatever. He's like, and I said, oh, well, I already sucked it up with a shop vac and stuff, and I think there's more. So I knew enough to know something wasn't right. That I could talk him through it. And lo and behold, the tank was shit, and he had to come in and put a new tank in. But it was like knowing enough to know what wasn't right.
Right.
Yeah.
There's value in that kind of knowledge.
Yeah.
There's so much value in
Think
it.
about going to a mechanic.
Yeah.
They could screw you over on everything.
Oh, hell yeah.
I went to go get my oil change one day, and they're like, oh, you need to do this, this, and that. And I'm like, yeah, but I just kind of want the oil change. They're like, well, you need to do this. I'm like, no, just do what I brought the car in for. He goes, well, good luck driving it home. I'm like, okay, I'll go somewhere else next time.
Yeah.
You know what I always say, though? It's a lease, bro.
Yep.
I don't give a shit.
There you go.
Do what I ask you to do.
At this time, though, it wasn't my lease.
Well,
so.
right.
But you're right.
But you could just say it. They don't know.
That's true. Like, oh, this is a 04. Yeah, well, it's an extended lease. It's 2021.
Great deal.
Yeah.
Geo tracker. It's not a lease anymore.
Oh, man. But no, I mean, the point remains, like, knowing enough
Yeah.
If you have enough knowledge.
makes the job, either you can do the job, or if somebody else is doing the job, you can at least be knowledgeable about
Yeah.
it. and
Absolutely.
not get hosed.
You know when to call shenanigans on something.
right?
Exactly.
Shenanigans.
Shenanigans.
What's that one place we used to go to?
Hey, farmer. You guys know about shenanigans?
Need more flair.
Yeah, he's handing them the gun. The pistol with the next person. This is shenanigans.
So good. Oh man, Z. I feel like what you're gonna say something?
No, go ahead.
Oh,
I was holding the pen.
yeah,
Stop.
I was ready for it.
It's like a teacher.
No, like we've done so much good talk about our dads and being dads.
Yeah.
What's going on with your kids right now? Like,
So I do have to say that I do have a proud dad moment,
yeah,
and it really is tied to, and I hate bringing it up, but it's tied to the COVID thing. That I'm actually pretty proud of my wife and I that we haven't had our house turned into Lord of the Flies shit going on in our house right now, where they're running around with spears and face paint and conch shells, just killing shit.
yeah,
yeah.
I think I like anybody right now who is managing keeping their kids from going absolutely bananas is doing a hell of a
100%,
job. And that's, we're like, they're actually in school, which is good. So I think it's that human interaction. And my kids are small enough now because they're 6 and almost 5, and that it's not like it's really affecting them. Like I've heard bad stories about kids that are like middle school, high school and stuff, and just missing out on that stuff and how it really does, emotionally. So I think my kids are young enough now where it's not that big of a deal. But, yeah, it's
good on you guys. I mean, we've said it kind of, especially over the last couple of months, is give yourselves credit.
Yeah.
Because no one's had to do this shit before.
right.
Yeah.
At least not in our lifetimes.
Right.
There's no playbook for, hey, global pandemic. Here's what you do to not go insane.
Right.
Like there's just none of that.
Good luck. Change your lives completely.
Right. Right.
I actually heard and not related to kids, but I heard a statistic that I thought was actually interesting, that COVID has actually shaved a year off the life expectancy of people in the United States.
Really?
Yeah.
How?
Based on what?
Because of so if you look at the average life expectancy of anyone, so it's whatever it is, age, because of the death of people this year.
Yeah.
And we're at almost 500,000, I think now.
Yeah.
That it's actually will affect the average life expectancy of Americans because of COVID.
It's crazy.
That's not Dr. Google. That's actually like
right,
Something
right.
you'd never even
Evidence-based.
ever think of.
No, I guess I was just wondering, like, is it a numbers game or is it, like you contract COVID, you recover,
yeah.
like, are we talking lasting effects or are we just talking gross
I
numbers?
think it's just they're looking at like actual
amount of people
who
that-
have
that
actually
passed.
succumbed
Yeah.
to that and their age, and then how that factors into the average lifespan of America.
That's crazy, man.
That's
That's
pretty
shit's no
insane.
joke.
Yeah.
I have my own feelings on what we're doing about it.
Oh,
And-
yeah.
And we're not going to get into that. But,
No, hell no.
It's an impossible choice, right?
Well,
So
and-
it's a situation. Like I said, there is no playbook.
Right.
I would not want to be the one making decisions on what we can and can't do right now.
No
Because you're screwed
chance,
either
man.
way. You're fucked if you do. You're fucked if you don't.
Well, and that's the thing that I thought was interesting when I was talking about like the letters that I write to my kids, and part of what I did when my kids that were so Jackson and Joey are both November birthdays.
Okay.
So the letters I wrote to them was like, I'm really going to be interested in how history talks about this time.
Yeah.
And how you guys remember this time.
Right.
Because it's funny how the virus is something that's in my kids'
Yeah.
vocabulary right now.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, is it because of the virus? And you're like, yes, it's because of the virus.
Yeah.
It's like,
Right.
you don't think like we didn't have to deal with this shit. Like
No.
the flu and all these other things that we had to deal with and
None of
whatever.
that.
But, you always talk about how you watch these movies that are these huge, like global disaster movies. And you're like, how the fuck would we deal with that if that really happened? And
Right.
like, we're actually dealing with something
Yeah.
that you could make
Yeah.
a movie about this shit.
I mean, I'll be honest. At the start of it, I watched Outbreak. I watched Contagion.
28 days
I
later.
did watch, yeah.
Dude, remember that Snapchat I sent like right at the beginning of all this when we were stuck at home, and I'm like, well played, Netflix.
Yeah, 'cause
the
it's
first three
trending
tires,
movies.
I'm like, well, Contagion, Outbreak. I'm like,
It was
what
the
is going
trending
on?
movies, yeah.
Well, that's another thing. Speaking of 28 days later, the shot. You get
when
your
they
shot,
came out
and then
with
they're
that,
like,
I was like,
and then 28
what?
days later, you get your second shot. I'm like, who made that number?
Come on, you
Come
guys,
on,
you guys
man.
couldn't have engineered this to
Maybe-
be like
maybe watch
29
the- yeah,
days,
maybe.
27 days.
I have gotten a shot and I haven't turned into a zombie, so I'm good.
Well, that's good.
No,
Did you
both
get
of
the
them?
second one
Yeah.
yet?
You got the second one 28 days later?
Yeah.
Are you acting a little funny though? So I'm not sure about you.
Yeah.
We'll start gouging my eyes out.
It's so the first one I got, and the same dude did the first one as the second one, and it's a pharmacist. And the first time, like the day after, I had right arm, I had a huge red mark, like from the middle of my arm up to my shoulder. I'm like, where the fuck did you shoot? Like my whole tricep hurt, and I was trying to figure out where this guy, but it was red, and it was so I had that, and then I didn't feel it was like fine. And then the next day after I got it, I was tired for the day, like kind of like the flu thing, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and that was fine. That was it. The second one I got, and so I got the Moderna shot, which was the later shot from the Pfizer, and everyone was like, "Oh, the Moderna shot. It's the second one that's actually not as it's bad, but it's not as bad, whatever." And then other people were saying it was bad. So I got the shot and I was fine, and then like I woke up like at noon, and I woke up at like midnight and had the chills for like 4 hours, so I couldn't sleep really well. I was up and down, but that was it. And then the next day I was really tired, and then that was it.
It's
I
not
think
bad.
I got lucky compared to what I've heard.
Yeah.
Horror stories about
Yeah.
that stuff, but
I mean, so for the longest time, like just with the flu shot back, before I had kids, I did not get the flu shot for like 8 years.
right,
Because the one time I did, I got so sick right afterwards. And it might not have been from the flu shot, but I just got sick. But I
Right.
was so deathly ill, like to the point
Yeah.
where I couldn't breathe. Like I had the upper
Right.
respiratory thing. I had
Yeah.
the worst chills I've ever had in my life. You know, you go back and forth
Yeah,
from being
yeah.
super hot, so I had like ice packs on
Right.
myself.
Yeah.
And then I had because I have asthma, so I had a nebulizer.
Yeah.
I couldn't breathe, so I had
Right.
that. And then I had, when I was freezing, I had like a bunch of blankets on me. I felt like I was dying.
Yeah.
Like it was miserable. I should have gone to the hospital probably. So after that, I'm like, never getting the flu shot again. And then obviously I had kids, so I started doing it every year, and I was fine. I never had anything like that again.
Right.
Like I said, maybe it had nothing to do
Sure.
with the shot, but it's like anything. You eat something, you get sick, and you're like, I'm never eating
Yeah.
that food
Right.
again.
You
Right.
tie that experience
Exactly.
to whatever.
So
yeah.
I was totally against it after that,
Right.
but then I was fine after that. Every time I got it, it's just
Right.
one of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean we're humans, right? Like our experiences dictate how we feel about things, and then going back to what we first started talking about, media. Like there's media about everything,
Right.
including this vaccine.
Well, you go and you look at stuff, and people are like posting like, person 1 day later dies. And I'm like, well, I'm never getting that shot.
The one thing that really upsets me is, and this is just because like part of what I do is I'm exposed to the numbers, so I understand the cases and what cases in the hospital I work at and other hospitals about patients,
like
and
real
stuff.
time
Like
shit.
yeah,
too.
like this is
right.
the actual number of people. So when I was having a conversation with somebody like, oh, there's only like 30 people in Ohio, I'm like, there's 30 people in the place I work with. That,
Right.
so you call bullshit on some of that stuff. But we are getting better. Like there's a trend that shows that the cases are going down and everything's happening, and whatever you want to tie to. And this is not the debate, but then you listen to the stuff on the news, and it's like, well, the numbers are going down, but this shit's gonna happen, and the variants and all these other things, and you're like, can we just celebrate
with the
something?
scare
Like
tactics.
stop
Right.
turning this into
The scare
the doom
tactics
and
is
gloom
like
stuff. Yeah, I hate that, and it's not just for this particular. I mean, it just so happens, and it goes back to the whole thing about what you're trying to sell, and you're building your audience. But that's the thing that upsets me about when I'm just trying to find, like, give me just facts. I just want facts.
That's
Well, the
really
news are
hard
really
to
good.
come by.
Well, those
Yeah.
big networks are going to be trying to push more scare tactics because their numbers are in the frickin' tank right now.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing
Yeah,
to talk
election's
about.
over.
Right.
They're like, what are we going to do? People are like, moving on. I'm going to go do something else now.
Right.
And those networks are like, they're feeling it right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's fear mongering, and it's polarizing stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like your run of the mill, like, hey, today was a good day,
It's not-
doesn't sell.
It's not interesting.
Doesn't sell. Like no one gives a shit. And that's sad, but it's also just human, right? Like we're attracted to the horror movies and we're attracted to the suspense thrillers because it gets your emotions flowing. It's the same thing when, news anchor whoever comes on and says breaking news, like, oh shit, like what's this breaking news?
Yep.
Right.
And you're going to take that at face value because you want to feel something, especially when we've been locked up for so long. You need to know what's going on. And that's, again, it is what it is, but it is frustrating to see that kind of stuff. And you're like, come on.
Yeah.
Let's
Well,
really
it sucks.
break
Like
this down.
I also, for me personally, this is me. I don't want to get that feeling from the news because I don't like disaster and I don't like terrible things happen to people. You know where I want to get that type of feeling from? I'll watch a movie.
Right.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? I don't want to get that shit from the news.
Right.
But
I mean, I get that though. You're right though. You're absolutely right. People do. That's how people feed
will
off that kind of
tune
shit.
in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when people
it's
tune
exciting.
in, the sponsors come in and do more ads and
Exactly.
And do you think that, so this is one of the things that I think, like, you think about if 50 years ago, some of the movies that we watch now that are just so commonplace that people watched back then, there'd be a whole different reaction because of just what we're accustomed to and what we're numb to.
Sure.
And, like death and all these things that happen now that we're just like, it's just part of the movie. And like back then it was like, if somebody died in a movie, it was like a big fucking deal. And I think that's just, we've grown to the point where we're numb to a lot more of those horrible events that I think our society has just grown numb to.
Well, it's not even just in movies. Like you go on Instagram too.
It's
you go on
the
Instagram
news
and you see somebody
whatever,
like, someone just got crushed by that car in that video. Like
and you're
usually
watching
you'd
this
be
shit
like,
real
oh my
time.
God, like you're sick to your stomach.
Yeah, and people are staring
People are
at
like,
that
oh
stuff.
man, and you just read in the comments like, oh good, that's fucking awesome.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
that guy just died, man.
Right.
Like,
Right. Yeah. It's we are numb as a society to traumatic things.
And you also worry about like people's value of life, like where people don't give a shit about something like that happening.
Right. Well, again,
Just not living
they
in
don't-
reality. Like it doesn't
that's-
hit you the same way.
I hate to say it's that video game thing because I don't want to blame it on video games, but you almost equate it to that stuff of, well, it's just you just die and then you start over again. It's like, no, you really die and you're done.
Well, I think it's because again, with the news being commercialized. So back in the day, I actually learned this recently. I think it was in the Reagan administration. They repealed an act that said, and I can't remember exactly what it's called, but basically there used to be a law in place that said that if you were going to report something, you had to also give credit to the other side of the argument. So if you're going to go on there and say that whiskey is bad for your health, you also have to say that there are positives to being able to consume such a beverage, right? Like you had to, and then that would allow the people to decide,
make a choice,
whether or not the information that they consumed dictates what they do one way or the other.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was repealed in the 80s sometime, whatever. That's just not a thing anymore.
Right.
And so it's so polarizing. And again, I'll go back to marketers ruining everything. And if you can make a buck off of traumatic information, you're going to do it. And I don't necessarily fault them for playing the system because that's the system that we have. Whether it's right or wrong is really irrelevant because that's just the world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we change that?
Well, ultimately, I think it's individual choice, and this is where like I go back to something as simple for me as just not getting onto some of these outlets that
Choose what you watch.
That's their bread and butter.
That's exactly the answer.
And I don't fault Facebook, Instagram, all these things for doing that because that's how they make their money, and that's what they're supposed to do. That's their money, right?
Yep.
And I watched that Social Dilemma on Netflix.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's really what caused me to start really thinking about how, again, I'm just a slave. I was a slave to that information. I was a slave to that feedback. And I wanted to break that chain for me and break that cycle of saying, I don't need that to make me feel like my life is a success or I'm fulfilled or whatever. I'm just going to live my life and be happy with what I'm doing. And I think ultimately what it will come down to is people need to just decide that they're going to take control over what their life is and not have someone or something dictate whether or not they're happy or they're successful. Or, I'm not looking at, hey, the Talking Dads podcast has got 800 more subscribers than I do. That means they're better than me. No, that doesn't mean anything, right?
Yeah.
That's just, it is what it is. And if I'm not going to have to judge myself by that standard. It's just, these guys are grinding every day. They're putting out something every week. That's what good for them versus if I want to make it better, maybe I have to put a little more work in or something I want to do. And I think it comes down also about some personal responsibility. You're saying,
it's all personal responsibility.
It is.
I think something that I've learned in the business world is that the market always wins. So you can grab a pile of dog shit. If you market it right, it's going to sell for a time.
right,
Once people realize that it's dog shit,
right,
they're going to stop buying your product. So the content that we consume, and that you're seeing that right now with the CNNs and the Fox Business and like all these like cable network cable news networks,
right,
you're seeing that the numbers are down. And why? Because people are tired of it.
right,
And you're seeing the numbers go up on independent shows and independent people that are not being pulled by strings,
Right.
Yeah.
Or at least that's the idea behind it. Like whether they are or not, who knows?
Well,
Like,
and
you
that's
have
the
to do
hard
your
part
own
too.
digging
You
on
really
that.
don't know for sure what the motivation of some of these guys are.
Right.
So are they really, that altruistic, or is that just there's some other force driving that?
Right.
And I think again it comes down to do your homework, do your research.
Right. And so like if we all took that personal responsibility as the consumer and said, I'm just done watching this.
Right.
Eventually that's going to go away.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
something else will take its place, and hopefully it's a little bit better.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, no one knows the life cycle of that and how it will actually play out. But, if a social media site or a news network or whatever is just constantly doing crap and they're making a ton of money off of it,
They're gonna
it's
continue to
going to
do
go
crap.
away.
Absolutely.
It's only going to continue making money if they have the attention.
Sure.
For sure.
So once the attention's gone, then they cease to exist.
Right.
Or they have to pivot if they're going to survive.
Try to figure out something,
And if
yeah.
they have to pivot to something that's more wholesome or more honest,
Right.
then that's a good thing.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah,
don't
you're right. That's absolutely true. I kind of see it right now.
It's just a long cycle,
Yeah.
right? Like it just takes a long time because of contracts and just behaviors. Like
Yeah.
it just doesn't happen overnight. And,
Right.
I think that we're starting to see, we got to live through, maybe not quite, but just before us, the transition from radio to TV. Right, like everyone used to get their news off of the radio,
Right.
and then all of a sudden the boob tube came out, and like, oh, I can watch this, and that was really exciting, and that's where you got your real good information,
Right.
And then we kind of went through the social media thing, and that was never considered an actual source of information. It was just for fun, but now the attention's there, so now that's becoming more informative, and like you can argue that. But there are outlets that are strictly on social media.
Right.
That's all they do.
You
is
could
report the
could
news,
find some of that stuff.
and that's out there. So I think that that's going to take over. And especially advances in technology, you're going to see that you're watching news on your phone over the TV.
Right.
When that happens, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
But you're right, though.
But I think I
You
think everyone sees
could
that
see it
coming.
You could see it. Yeah.
Sure.
I feel like it's happening.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we'll be the forefront in dad news.
yeah. Today on Dad News.
Do, 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 do.
Yeah. Oh, breaking news. New
Breaking
dad
news.
changes
We're
diaper.
going live to Steve on location.
Hey, I'm at the house of so and so, and he just changed his first shitty diaper. Turns out he didn't need a gas mask. Back to you, Ian.
Thanks, Steve.
Just reviewing these numbers here. Yeah, Mo.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Back to you, Mo.
Official time, Mo. I want the aggro crag rock.
Remember we made one?
Yeah,
I still have that picture. I ran across it not too long ago. Remember, what was that called?
Guts.
Guts.
Nickelodeon.
On Nickelodeon, where the kids did the challenges and the
It
aggro
was
crag
like it's like you win a piece of the aggro crag. It's like the final. It's like what was that? What was the show? American Gladiators.
Yeah.
It was like a kids version of it. And the last thing that they do is they have the 3 kids have to race up to the top of the aggro crag.
The aggro crag, yeah.
And
It's
whoever
like this
wins comes
metal
home with a
mountain.
piece of it, and it's like this glowing rock.
Yeah.
And I looked online the other day because I'm like, I just want one. Like I was thinking about
you
like
find
I was
one?
thinking of us like having our like a studio where we could just throw some shit around. And I was like, I want to make a legit piece of the aggro crag, and I think you could do it easily with
Did you find one to buy?
no, nothing good.
I bet,
But I was thinking
on
you could find
eBay
a
or
box and you could go buy some
kid-
fiber or some like
Some
not
kid
fiberglass, but, like,
somewhere will hawk
plexiglass.
that for cheap.
Yeah, I'm looking.
We'll keep looking because when we have our own,
I want the
like,
aggro crag
permanent place,
on the bar.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we won that.
Amazing.
Whatever, dude. Yeah, the
So
aggro
it's
crag.
just some
one
aggro
of the-
crag.
yeah.
But remember, we was at Arco's house, and
Yeah.
there was that snowstorm, and we built like a piece that looked like it, and we were holding it up like,
Yeah. I want to get it with. I mean, we
gotta
could
be
make
green
one
though.
It's got to be green.
Yeah,
With all the stuff you could buy online, I bet you can make it for like $30.
probably right. You're probably right.
I know. I know I'm right.
Obviously.
So okay. So you got your proud dad moment in there.
Yeah.
I feel like you nailed a dad hack really early on with the Book of Dad.
Yeah.
I did like that.
I think the journaling and well, you said something about like keeping track, like the letters to your kids and everything too, like almost like journaling.
Yeah.
That's also something that's Pete.
Velada,
Yeah.
yeah.
He talked about journaling and stuff like that, and I
Well,
think that's a really cool
and-
thing to do.
And the neat thing about the Book of Dad stuff is it's mine, right?
Yeah.
So it's mine for my kids, what I think is important. You could write something totally different. You could write something totally, and I think that that's, it's something that you can make personal to your children that you think would be. But I also think that it's something that I imagine in my head, like sometime down the road, my kids actually cracking that open and going, "Holy shit!
Yeah.
Like this is cool." Like reading this.
Yeah.
I mean, I would
and it
love
could
to
be
have
the
something like
email
that.
Thing. It could be the email thing that
Yeah.
you set up an account for them and you just have this inbox full of hundreds of messages or
Right.
or one message for all that, whatever.
Right.
It doesn't really
I mean,
matter.
imagine think about that. Like, say, and that's not
It's
morbid, but like
legacy.
think about like you're gone.
Yeah,
right?
we're talking legacy.
And your kid
here.
could go back and look at like you said, let it be one letter.
Yeah.
And you're like, you could have that and just read that and be like, oh man, it takes you back and it.
Perfect example is hope this is okay, but like if you had the chance to open up a random email account to get a letter from your old man,
Hell yeah!
how amazing would that be?
Oh my God, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I just think that that's foresight that
Right.
we should think about,
Right.
Because we don't, tomorrow's not promised.
Nope.
Like we do everything that we can, and maybe not always, but like to live our lives
to an extent, yeah.
and be there for our children. But the reality is Father Time always wins,
Right.
And so if we can do something for our kids that, whether it's immediately after or 10 years later or whatever, like I always choke up when I see these stories of like, my dad sent me whatever for my 20. Like, there was a story not too long ago. This kid turned 21 and there was a local bar that he went into and was like, hey, your dad bought you your first beer. And like he went in there and like it had been sitting there for like 4 years. Like his dad died like 4 years ago.
Wow.
But he went in there and said, hey, when my kid turns 21, I want to buy him his first beer. And like he knew to go in there and like what an amazing like story. And, like,
Goosebumps,
just
man.
to go in there
Yeah.
and like I don't know, like oh,
Well, it's
Seriously.
funny
like
too. 'cause
literally goosebumps.
Yeah, literally.
So Jody knows when we're watching, and it's almost embarrassing to say, but it is. it's quite true that if I watch a show that has anything to do with parents or family or whatever, and that whole like that idea, I get mushy.
Yeah,
and I
sure.
do, and
I do
I'm,
too.
not, I'm like because I think about like what I'm missing out on, and like Jody will know. She'll look at me and she's like, "Yeah, I know what's going on." Like she knows that I'm thinking about that kind of stuff. And it's something that never goes away when you think about your parents and you know, like again, it's been almost 20 years since my parents have been gone, but I still will think about that stuff, and it's like it's still so fresh in my mind. And then I think about, you know, the reality of, okay, I'm 46 years old, and I had Jackson when I'm 40. So the reality of it is, if he's 18, I'll be almost 60 by the time he turns 18. So if he waits as long as I do to have kids, like that's a long fucking time. Am I going to make it that long? Like, it's on my bucket list to make it to 100. I you know, that's like, I'm going to make it to 100 years. But I don't know if that's going to happen or not. So anything I can do now to kind of instill some kind of idea for them and for future, I think it's part of how you live on, right? So
it's legacy.
All of these things that we're doing, the videos and all this kind of stuff, is our way of kind of living on and giving that legacy to it. So this is my way of saying, in 80 years from now, somebody can look at his old tattered book and go, holy shit, like, this is Grandpa wrote this, right?
Yeah.
And it's how I live on.
Or, and this is the way I think of it too, or somebody else finds it and says, holy shit, I'm going to do this for my kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you've inspired some other and you know, you don't even know these people.
Yeah.
You know, or you know, your kid does that,
right?
And that just becomes a family tradition. Like, all the men in the Zalewski family, this is what we do,
right?
And we write letters to our kids, and like, again, that's legacy.
Yeah.
And that's what we work for, right? That's what we do, is we try and build a legacy, because what else is there,
right?
You know, we can buy all the houses and the cars and go on all the trips, and that's all great,
right?
But legacy is what we're after.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all there is.
Right. Yeah. And it used to be that everything was in stories, because we just, you know, that's how everybody told. You gathered around at a fire or whatever. And back in the day, it was before written word, and then written word turned into, this is how we kept our legacy going, by written word. And now we have this media in it. As much as I
turned into home videos on
Right.
Christmas, and
Right.
and now what are we doing now?
And as much as I am, you know, I hate technology and have this love-hate relationship with some of that stuff, you can't argue with the fact that there's just such a resource there to make that available for our kids.
Yeah, you could do it. You could do anything with it.
And if that's my one message to anybody listening, it's just, you know, if you have that opportunity, take it. Like, take that opportunity to make those videos, even if you think it's silly. Make that stuff so that you last for them. And maybe it is that it's at 20, 40, 50, 60 years down the road that somebody gets the chance to look at it however they do. And you're not thinking about, I kick myself in the ass for not having this stuff.
Right. Well, yeah, because it's hard to think about, because we live in such a instant gratification society, and we're all guilty of it. I mean, I know I am. Like,
absolutely.
I want to know right now. I want to send that video to my family and then all get a kick out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's great. But what's really cool is when there's a picture that I have of Sloan, and she's in like a Frozen dress or Elsa dress, and she's like kind of behind a doorway, but she's looking out, and she's just got this look on her face. Like, I mean, it's a terrible picture.
Right.
Like, she's going to be mortified when I have that on the big screen at her graduation. Yeah. But it's hilarious. And like, my mom uses that photo almost as like an emoji for, I'll tell her something like crazy or surprising, and she'll just send a picture of that. And she'll be like, it's the best, right?
Yeah.
Like, so we need to keep those things.
Yeah.
And especially, like I kind of talked about it before, is the things that aren't perfect.
Right.
The things that aren't, you know, the most pristine video from start to finish. Like, keep all of it and hold on to it and revisit it as much as you can.
Right.
So that way it stays in your memories and you can go back to it later, because we don't think about the later enough.
Yeah. And I
know
think,
I don't.
I think you're right too. I think it is about living life unfiltered. I think it's just about, you know, not worrying about how it looks to anybody else, just worrying about in the moment what that experience meant to you. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, that creates that legacy, that memory, that everything for everybody else down the road. And you just have that. And I think, you know, that's the one thing that I've learned as I grow older is, you know, you can spend all this money on, like you're saying, cars and all these things, but the experience or the experience you tie into those things matters more than any tangible or material possession that you could ever have. And I try to, that's what I want to teach my kids. And I'm trying to remind myself of is, that's fine. Play with your toys or whatever, but let's build an experience together. And then you'll remember that and you'll tie that to something. Some emotion will trigger that with you. And it'll always be something like that.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it 100 times. Like, I didn't have a ton of awesome toys and things like we didn't go on amazing vacations, but the stuff I remember about with my family or my parents is stupid little things, like going to like a park with the family, you know, like just silly little memories that like always stick with me. I don't know about the most expensive toy that my parents bought me.
No.
I don't remember what the hell that was.
Long gone.
Don't care.
Super Scope 6.
Okay, well.
Remember that?
Yeah.
For Super Nintendo?
Yeah.
Thing was amazing. They had the tank game.
Yeah.
I
remember that
shit.
Oh, I do remember when Mike got the. Remember for NES they had like the glove.
The glove.
Oh yeah, the
I
glove.
Remember Mike got that one year for Christmas. I do remember that. Not because we used it to play the games, but we used it like for like running around the house and playing like we had like a robotic arm. Because I mean, trying to play a game with that was just impossible. There's like 90 buttons on it. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is not helping me in Contra right now. I don't know. I just need my button, my 2 buttons.
That funny thing. So the one thing I remember of all that stuff most, and again, there's an age difference too, but it was called the Bally Arcade, and it looked like it was this predated Atari, all these other things, and it was a box with a keypad, and they looked like cassettes, and you just slid it in and you played it. But the controllers were it looked like a gun grip with a trigger, and the top of it was a joystick that you could move and turn. And I don't know, my dad was always, when he always looked for the budget stuff. So I think this is probably cheaper than everything else at that point. But I remember, the only thing I remember, but why it was so cool is because I played all the games with my brothers.
Yeah.
Like I learned how to play
experience.
like that. That's the tie to me was having my brothers learn how to, and they had a basic programming thing where it was like, remember basic was like 10 question mark quote, that's my brothers learned how to do at computers, and then now they're, computer guys. And I'm like, I just remember going, that's stupid, but I'd watch them.
Yeah.
Right.
I used to watch my brothers play everything. I always like have more fun watching them.
Right. But I like, that's my memory. That's what that piece of equipment ties that to me. And I was telling my wife, I'm like, this whole thing about, again, I'm not old, but I'm getting older. And my worry is that some of the things that were big memories for me are going to start slipping away. And I have all these, I was looking through pictures and I'm like, I want to start doing something else where I take a picture and I just like record myself talking about the picture.
Well, that's cool. That's
So
a good idea.
I'm remembering the memory. So if later I don't remember, I can play it back, or my kids can see these pictures and look at it and go, oh, this is what Dad, and it's that moment in time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that kind of stuff, like you said, like thinking of those memories with your brothers.
Yeah.
Like the one day my kids were playing with my brother's kids up in what used to be my brother Chris's old bedroom. And I'm talking to my brothers and I'm like, man, do you remember Mike's first communion? That video Mom took of us, like with the camcorder of us all sitting in this room together. And my brother Mike says exactly what we said in that video. And we're all like, holy shit, I remember that. Like all of us start thinking about it. And like, I mean, and then watching our kids sit in that exact room playing together, I'm like, dude, that is just insane to me. Like, it's just, last night my brothers and I were hanging out, just the 3 of us. And we just started talking about all kinds of stuff from our childhood. Yeah. And I just started bringing all kinds of shit back. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. Like, it's so cool. And like, it all comes flooding back.
Right.
But without that conversation with them, I probably, like you said, you worry about forgetting about those things.
Sure. Yeah.
So talking about it and keeping it like a thing, keeping it relevant, will help you hold on to those things.
Absolutely.
Oh, there's so much value in that.
There is, man.
Because it brings you back to what is important.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
like,
I know
like you said,
I
like,
lose sight of that all the time.
Right.
Because like you said, you start thinking about like money. You want to
do that.
Yeah, I want to go here. I want to have this car. I want to have this house.
Like,
no, absolutely. I'm not saying don't have. It's like saying don't have goals.
Yeah, no, you should have goals and dreams and aspirations.
Sure. But think of like big picture. What's most important?
What is important? Because having that time with your family.
Do you think about like your childhood house? Mm-hmm. Sure, it wasn't the biggest, best thing in the world. Did you give a shit?
No, it was awful.
Did you give a shit though? Did that mean a thing to you? Do you like you're like I want to make sure my kids have the biggest and best things, but they really, when it comes down to it, don't give a shit about any of that.
We grew up in this shitty house in the Headlands, and the thing that I remember is me and my brother chasing the dog. So it was like a staircase in the middle of the house, and our bedroom was upstairs, and we had this route that we would take, and we would get in like on pillows, like there was these like big, like almost like they were like the size of like a twin mattress, but it was thin. It was like basically a big sleeping bag.
Yeah.
And we would get from the top of the stairs, we would go down, and as soon as we got to the bottom of the stairs, the dog would start chasing us, and we would run around and around and around and around, and my mom would flip the fuck out. Like, you're gonna crack your skulls open and this and that. And like, we didn't give a shit.
No.
We were just running, and it was fun. Yeah, I mean, that was amazing.
But that's it. That's the only thing that really mattered, right?
Yeah,
You know?
100%.
I had, so my old house that I grew up in, when my dad died, we sold the house, and one of the woman who bought it actually knew my sister. So we were just, I think it was, we were around there, and she's like, hey, do you want to come in and check out the house? We've done some renovations or whatever, but I'm like, yeah, let's go check it out. And she's like, there are certain things that we couldn't change. So we went in the basement, and the two things that stuck out is, one, we had a laundry chute, and my brother, when we were painting, he had his hand and he put a handprint on the laundry chute. And she's like, I just, for some reason, felt like I should keep that. And right away, like, I remembered that moment. Like, I remembered exactly when he
hit
did
you.
that.
What a freaking saint.
And then in the back room, we had this whole wooden, my dad built this wooden shelf. And I had a marker, and I wrote my name, Tony, because back then I was Tony. I wrote Tony Zalewski and marker. It was just total kid. Like, I was like 5 or 6, whatever. But she kept it.
Probably got
like,
your ass beat for it.
I'm sure I did. Yeah, knowing my dad. Yeah.
Right.
But she's like, just something told me that I should keep. Like, we just thought that this gave this whole room character. And I was looking, and I'm like, again, could totally remember myself doing that.
That's amazing.
And it's like, you know, don't live there anymore. But you look at that, and it's like, those things just bring back that, the memory, the feelings, all those things. And then it just brings back a flood of emotion. And
That's just like driving by your childhood house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, my mom still lives in ours, so I go there all the time. But like, think about that. Like, go past your old house in the Headlands.
Yeah.
Just go drive
I've
past it.
done
And you probably go like, holy shit.
Dude,
and all of a sudden, boom. Like
it.
you said, it just starts.
I couldn't find the last time, or a couple times ago. It was just me and Chelsea. So this is before kids, I think, and we were driving through, and I couldn't find it. And I realized that somebody had bought the land in front, because our house was set way back.
yeah.
And they split the land, and they put a house in front.
Oh.
And so then after that, we figured out that there was a house behind it. And I was like, holy shit, there it is. And I mean, it's so small. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it was cool, though, to see. And you could see the lake. And I was like, yeah, that's where I jumped off the roof.
Yeah, you start thinking about all that stuff that you
That's
did.
where, like, my dad found me behind the garage, and I had these slugs all over me. Like, there was this weird thing where there was all these, like, nasty slugs, and I was just like playing with slugs.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, and now they creep me out. But like,
I mean, it's pretty nasty when you think
they're
about it.
terrible. But I was like 3.
Yeah, but who cares? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty cool to, and again, that's all legacy stuff, right? Like, that is all. If we can pass on these memories,
Right.
the best that we can, and I love that idea of like looking at a picture and then like recording your reaction to it.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
That's something that, you know, one day we're not going to be able to react to.
Right.
Because the memory's just not there. And that's a fucking scary thought.
Yeah.
But, like, if you can do it now,
Right.
then it's there.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool. I
Yeah.
love that idea.
You're free to
know
use
what's-
it.
We can do it. Are we good with that? Trademark.
It's trademark. I love leaving the community to use my ideas.
Boom. Yeah. Go to your parents' house and go find like an old box of pictures.
Yeah.
You want to.
I have a metal. So 2 reasons why. One is it's a box that my mom used to keep all of their bank records and stuff in. So I kept it because that was the memory of it. So it's just a metal. It's one of those with, it's got the little lock on it and the clip. So I kept that, but it's all pictures.
Yeah.
And you don't need pictures anymore. Like, you have digital for everything, but this is all. So I was looking through it the other day because I was looking for, because actually it was the blog I was writing, and I was looking for a picture of me and my dad, and I was like trying to find a good one of just my father and I, and struggling. But I started looking through all these pictures, And that's when I started to think about, man, I just need to like remember this stuff. And it was, we had a box of pictures in my parents' attic that we just had tucked in a corner that was just out of the way. That was the pictures, like you threw albums and everything. And my sister has it now, and we've passed it around, and everybody's kind of picked through their whatever. But it's that thing of just like, it's just something tied to that, and it's almost even it's a multi-sensory experience, right? So it's like the smell of the pictures and the texture and all those things kind of
That
bring
crease
back something.
that's in the middle of it because it got bent up at some point, but that makes it more special.
Exactly.
Yeah, 100% agree.
There's so much that's tied to one thing, and I think that probably is what I feel sorry for my kids about, that they're not going to understand that because everything is just on a screen.
Yeah.
I was watching, like the first time I actually saw, so my son was reading we used to, you teach him on iPads and stuff. And the first time he was like looking at a book and he was swiping the book. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? But I'm like, I just realized, I'm like, he doesn't know that. Like this to him is just the same thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's right. Like, he's not going to understand that.
Yeah, because eventually this is going to go away.
Yeah,
everything,
it will go away.
like all that stuff. And, that's why I think part of the stuff with the Book of Dad stuff for writing it, because I thought about, I'll just do it digital because then I'll have it. But I'm like, no, I actually like writing it too, because I think that adds character to it. Like,
it does.
Just the texture, the handwriting, the what. Maybe one day it's like everything is a little bit cleaner, and the next it's not. Maybe it's because of something, and you're trying to figure that out in your head. Like, why is this?
It's like spilled coffee on this page.
Right.
Like, you must
Listen, there's a very good chance that our kids' generation will be the last ones to like
have paper
see
books.
that kind of stuff.
Right.
No,
you're
Right.
absolutely right. It'll be like the Matrix.
like,
Just plug
I'm
them
not
in.
a,
I know kung fu.
Right. I'm not a. I don't want to say sentimental because I'm pretty sentimental, but like that, I wouldn't think like, all right, so perfect example is like you get the argument all the time is like, well, these kids don't even learn cursive. I'm the guy that says you don't need fucking cursive.
Right.
No, what do you use cursive for? Your signature?
Right. And you don't really have to.
No, it's true. You don't have to. But I'm saying that's
But
only thing
when
you
it
use
comes to
for.
something like this, I'm like, man, that could be kind of cool to go find like I'm trying to put myself in my grandkids' position. Is to see this binding of pages and like written word on it. Like that's going to be weird one day.
Yeah.
And
Finding a treasure.
yeah,
All right,
literally.
You want to talk about dad hack, but just think about it like, for people who are married, and I've done this, and I haven't done it enough. But have you ever written your wife a letter?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have too. And
Yeah.
She has all of mine that I've written.
and
her.
it's just like it's the same thing. Like and it's just that thing of, you can get emails, but taking the time to do all that, to write that down, and then getting it and being able to open, like it's a tangible piece. I think that means so much more.
It does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And you know what's crazy about it too is I feel like you think better.
Yeah.
And again, I am a huge tech person. I love the advancement and like making everything a little bit easier and all that. I recently was writing some stuff down for the business, and this has nothing to do with anything legacy, but for some reason there was a pad of paper in front of me, and I just started writing notes, and it was kind of crazy how much more I retained off of that session than just using my notes app and typing stuff. I do that all the time, and I have to go search for them. Like,
Right.
all right, what word can I search for that I know was in there that I can find this thing?
Yeah.
And I don't know. There is something about writing.
I think
Yeah.
I learn and I retain better when I'm doing, like, I learned that from school and from nursing school and everything.
But we were taught that way too.
Right.
We had to write.
Yeah.
So
But
I don't know if our
wrote
kids are going to
them,
have
sure.
that.
No, and I again, there's just I understand that this is the way things are going, and to make it easier for kids and whatever. But I think that's, for me, it was always, I just retained things better when I wrote it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. It was just that whole thing of
Well,
just
I've
putting
always
it down
said
to paper.
I've always said like I love talking. Obviously, like
Right.
this is like my preferred media format. But when I type stuff out, I definitely remember it better than when I say it.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then like when I was writing those notes, I was like, holy shit,
It's even better.
I remember almost verbatim.
You can. It's almost like you can visualize. Like
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
different thing. Like
yeah.
talking is you can if you can remember the conversation, whereas typing you can see the screen, right?
Right.
But writing, it's like
You're
You're
physically
physically
feel
doing
the
it.
pressure of the pen on
Yeah.
your finger. You feel the paper. It's almost again. It's.
I want to go
it's
write
all
a
this-
manifesto.
Tonight.
I might.
Your book of dad.
Yeah, my book of dad.
Yeah, 3 sentences in, passed out. You know what? This isn't for me.
a lot more work.
Exactly.
No, I love that shit though. I mean, because I do think about legacy more and like what can we actually pass on to our kids.
Right.
You want to be remembered, right?
Sure.
Like and to be completely honest, I don't give two shits what the world remembers me by.
No, I've
But
gotten
if
over
my
that.
kids can sit around a campfire or a family dinner or whatever and say, "Hey, remember when Pop did
Right.
this?"
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
what I want.
You
That's the
keep-
most important thing.
You keep people alive in that sense,
Right.
Like I keep my
live
father
forever,
alive,
yeah.
In that, you know, and you know, when we have our family discussions and we talk about, hey, remember when this, and it's like you laugh or you cry or whatever, but it's like they're still there,
Right.
Yeah.
and that's the
the best
more
part.
important thing about.
I
for
mean,
me.
that's immortality.
Yeah.
Right. And like, I'm not trying to like dramatize it, but like,
Well, it is though.
that's
It's
what
definitely
it is.
immortality.
Right.
Like you can live forever.
right, and again,
by having an impact on those that are closest to you.
at some point, your physical body will stop.
Right.
But what you leave and your legacy and how you're remembered and your family passes these things down is how you
Yeah.
remain.
Exactly.
Is how you live on. And I think that that's what I hope is that I do enough for my kids now that I'm building those memories and I'm building those experiences and everything that when I'm gone, that lives on, that those stories. And I look at pictures now and I show my kids and I'm like, this is your Papa Z and your Nana Z. And they're like, okay. And they don't quite understand it yet because they don't, they don't have a physical
Right.
person to relate it to like they do Jody's parents. But the more we talk about it, and that's why I'm like, when I get together with my family, I'm like, talk about them to my kids. They're not going to get it right away, but the more you talk about it, the more they start to relate that stuff.
Well,
And
and
then
there'll be a point where they'll then start asking questions.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, and that's when that's when it really becomes a thing.
Right.
Right. They become a person
Sure.
versus just a story.
Right.
Yep.
You know.
And then just start telling stories about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been the deepest podcast we've done in a long time, and
Yeah.
I freaking love
It
it.
is
Good.
great.
Great.
Going through
This
the
was
old
an
photo
amazing,
albums. later,
amazing. Oh yes, same.
Which is amazing to do. So if you haven't, my dad has them at his house. Jesus Christ. Can't even- Old photo albums.
Yeah.
Going through those is so much fun.
It really is.
And it get emotional.
Yeah.
And it's fun and you start remembering
But
things.
it's
But to do something like that is just
and
it's
there's
amazing.
nothing wrong with getting emotional. To that
Absolutely-
stuff,
no,
too,
not at
because
all.
That's
I
like
would argue that it's necessary.
Yeah.
It's great. It feels amazing.
Right.
It just takes you back.
Right.
You get those feelings of like those pictures. You're
And
like,
again,
man, I
those
remember that day.
pictures-
Yeah.
Those pictures probably in that moment were nothing special,
Right.
No.
but you remember it 25, 30 years later, and you're like, man, that was a good day.
But and two, if you really relate that right now for you, if you can say, I know that this picture that I took when I was a kid and we didn't think anything of it. So now when you
Right,
have a chance
right.
with your kids, maybe you actually take a moment to take that picture, even if it is a stupid picture or that unfiltered or whatever, because it's like 20 years from now, 40 years, 60
Right.
years from now, someone's going to look at that and go, oh shit, I remember that moment.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
not going to be there,
Right.
or maybe you will, but not. But it's like that. That'll bring that same thing back.
Yeah. Damn it.
Dude.
It's great.
I love having you on because like that's just amazing. Like I feel so much better about what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because
This is the kind of stuff that people don't think about. And then,
right. Like but
it reminds you.
You know,
No, we
so
don't.
Like
So-
I
but
love
we're-
being reminded of what our real purpose is.
Right.
You know, it is so easy to get caught up in all the bullshit, whether
Sure.
it's politics or it's, you know, oh, so-and-so got a new car and, you know, whatever. Like those are easy things that are in the moment seem to mean a lot.
Right.
That don't mean a goddamn thing.
Nope.
And when we get to sit here and talk with another dad about fucking my childhood home,
Yeah.
like I wasn't expecting to talk about that
Right.
tonight.
that wasn't going to come up.
And that's just amazing because like I've got all the feels right now. Like I want to go find those old photo albums, and I
Cool.
want to go look at the dogs that we had and the playground that we played in and things like that, and see like the ridiculous outfits and my mullet and all of that kind of stuff that just I know is a thing.
Right.
And I want to go show my kids that.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I want to look at your dad. This is
Right,
what I did
yeah.
when I was your age.
Yeah.
You know.
Because you could tell them these stories about, like, hey, when I was your age, I was doing this. Or you
Right.
could show them the pictures of you when you were that age. And they
Right.
can
Yeah.
relate to it a little bit more
Right.
because they're like, well, look at dad as
There's
a
a
baby
visual.
or a
Right.
5-year-old.
Right.
He was
Right.
just like me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because, like, how many times your parents telling you when you're little, like, hey, when I was your age, you're like, you were never
Yeah.
my age.
Right.
You're almost-
Or like you're doing something, or your kids are doing something, and your mom's like, "Yep, well, that's you to a T."
like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it
Yeah.
now. I see that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't that doesn't register
Right.
until a certain point in your life when you're like, oh shit, you're right. Like I see that where people can talk about what my son does and they're like, that's you. And I even recognize it because Jackson, who my oldest is he's a very like emotional kid. And he takes everything in and he you know, he can get really upset at a drop of a hat. And I look at him and I'm like, holy shit, that was me when I was a kid. Like I cried at the drop of a hat because
Yep.
everything like affected me.
Yeah.
And so I try to remember that when I'm dealing with him because I'm like, okay, well, this is how I was. So
How did mom
It's-
handle
it's
dad
okay.
handle this? Yeah.
right. And then I think about how my dad handled it, and I'm like, I don't want to do it that way because I know how my dad was back in the day. Is like, stop crying, little baby.
Right.
And it's like, okay, how can I do this the right
There's
way?
gotta be a
to say
balance,
it's
right.
okay for you to be that way,
Yeah.
but right. So we talk through it a little bit more, and I think it's just part of being, you know.
Well, that does help though,
involved
because like my mom will say that to me. I'm like, I can't believe he's doing this. I can't believe he acts like this. She's like, this is exactly how you acted. I'm like, oh.
Fuck me, right?
I'm like, sorry, mom, I didn't know that. I'm like, I guess I was a fucking asshole, and I didn't know why you wanted to kill me all the time.
right.
You know, it's like, okay, I get it
No,
now.
but it gives you perspective.
It does. I'm
right?
like, wow, mom, I see what you went through,
Yeah.
and I appreciate you even more.
Right.
Right.
And you
Right.
constantly do that as you get older. You start appreciating your parents so much
Oh my
more.
God,
Because when you're
yes.
younger, you're like, they don't understand anything.
So
Like they knew exactly what they were talking about the whole time.
the first time you said, because I told you so, did like you just stop for a minute?
You're like,
I do every time I say that.
Oh my God.
Well,
Yeah.
because I say
Why? Because I told you
And
so.
I
Oh.
do. I give it the old college try
Right.
every single time. And like, all right, this is why we do that. And then they continuously like debate it. And I'm like, all right, well, because I fucking said so.
yeah, do it all the time.
Damn it, Will.
There it is.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. I catch myself acting like my parents quite often.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we do, right?
Right.
It's because that's what you were. That's how you learned.
And that's what our kids will do to their kids.
Yep.
Well, the thing is, like Sam will respond to things the same way I do. I'm like, this kid is me, and it's so painful. Like I look at Liz, like he'll respond to something. Like I said something to him the other day. He goes, "Ah, cool, man." And I go, I'm like, I just looked at Liz. I go,
My
"Nope,
bad.
that's me. Sorry. I'm like, great. Well, I got to figure out how to fix this because he's talking exactly like I do. They pick up everything.
Yeah.
You know what, though? If your kids turn out like you,
They're going to
they'll
be
good.
screwed.
yeah.
Oh, they're going to be good. Thanks, man. Appreciate
I
that.
mean, seriously, though.
I
I
was gonna
mean,
say good,
that's. I mean, that's the thing that, again, going back to the show, that I love about this is we meet dudes and we talk to them and build this relationship, and it's like, all right, like we have funny stories and we
Right.
like to joke about it, but if our kids turn out like us, Like we did something right.
Right.
Like
if
we're constantly giving
if
our
we're
parents
parenting
credit.
Yeah, if we're parenting like our parents did,
Right.
then we're probably okay. I mean, it's good to chop it up and mix it up. Do your own thing.
Do your own thing, and
but at the
like
same
adjust a little
yeah,
bit.
but use the same guidelines in a way.
Use the values.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we're doing an okay job.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we picked something up from our parents,
Right.
which is okay too,
And,
obviously.
And we're kidding ourselves if our parents weren't thrown a few back when we were asleep and bitching about us.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, yes.
You know what I mean? Like they were doing that.
Oh yeah, but we just have in here. We
My
have a
parents
much
do it
better
in front
form
of
of
me.
therapy.
My parents still do it in front of me.
Yeah.
So.
I know my father at some point was like, "What the fuck is wrong with Anthony?"
Of
Yeah,
course.
it's like there's something wrong with him. There's because
that one ain't right.
Yeah, there's something wrong with that one. Say it about Sam all the time. I'm like, I don't know. And my parents said the same thing about me. I guarantee you. They're like, this kid's fucked up, man. Like, we should get rid of him. Can we return him? I don't know. He sucks. What's the return policy?
Can't give him back, right?
We're stuck, right? Okay. Can't just drop him off.
Oh
But,
man.
well, Anthony, thank you, man. This has been
Yeah, Z,
amazing.
Thanks so much, dude.
Yeah.
This was incredible. I'm
pleasure.
glad I texted you. 'Cause,
Yeah, absolutely.
Since you're not on social media anymore, I can't.
But you know,
Yeah, how do we get a hold of him?
phone call away. And God forbid we actually talk on the phone every once.
I know, right? That's crazy.
Just call me
No.
and do another surprise phone call like you did.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was such a good idea, by the way.
I know.
You know,
And
did you get
worst part
him?
About,
'Cause- no, he
because
never
the worst
got
part
to do
about it
me.
was I did it to Steve, and then I'm like, all right, I can't do it to you right away, and then I just got
Listen,
sidetracked.
you give me way too much credit.
No, 'cause but I never told him anything.
no way. I never knew that
but I
was
never,
coming.
but I never told him
Well, there may be one.
Yeah, all right. I'm ready.
because he's texting me. I'm like, this guy needs to talk about something. Like, I'm like, I gotta get him. I told Liz, I'm like, I gotta give Anthony a call because like
something's wrong with the phone.
like,
I don't know. But
he keeps saying like, hey, he's like, you had a minute to talk. I'm like, oh shit, something's going on with him. I need some time. I'm gonna go talk to Anthony for a little bit. And he's like, hey,
back. It's,
No, honestly, I love that idea though because, again, voice is such a true medium.
Yeah.
Right. Like you can fake words and you can edit words when you're doing something, especially when you're doing something on the spot.
Right.
Like you're gonna say what you're gonna say, and I do love that quick like kamikaze style like ambush.
Yeah.
You know.
it was great because as soon as he told me what was going on, I'm like, I'm gonna go grab a drink.
Yeah.
I instantly went and covered, and I sat on the phone with him.
Listening to that, and I was like, dude, this is fucking gold.
Yeah, it was fun.
You should do
all
it
right,
again.
I'll keep it up.
You
do it
should.
again.
I didn't say anything to Ian because I'm like,
No, you didn't.
I don't know when he's gonna put this out, but maybe you'll get him soon. And yeah,
I remember like when like the notification popped up on my phone, like new episode. It was like ambush, or I can't remember what did you call it, ambush podcast,
Ambush podcast.
ambush podcast, yeah. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna listen to this. And I was like, oh, this is great.
it was fun too.
Cool.
But yeah, dude, thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming on.
Good time as always.
Always welcome because we just go through some good shit. This is nothing like I expected the podcast to go tonight, and that's a testament to you and what you guys are doing, and that's wonderful.
Yes.
Well,
Couldn't agree more.
I anytime I get to talk, just for the sake of talking is fun, and being able to share stories. I think that again comes back to just what this is all about, and how important, really important this podcast is for people to share stuff and to share those ideas and to share stories, and this is like needed. I think
because where else would you talk about it? You know, like
Right.
you don't usually have this type of conversation with anybody, right? Because I mean, not only because there's always something going on,
Right.
So if you're having a conversation with somebody, it's usually very quick, and it's about what's going on right now.
We get all
Right?
the time. Like we get like comments or whatever. It's like, oh, dude, your shows are just too long. I can't. Okay, well then it's not for
Sorry.
you.
Yeah, right.
Like
This is
this is for us. Like
Right.
and the guest
guests
will come on and they're like, hey,
I would much rather talk to somebody for 3 hours and really get into some shit.
Right.
And like, look, we're not solving world hunger, but we're helping each other out,
Right.
and we're gonna go home tonight in a better place.
Sure.
I think. I know I am.
yeah, because I think about that. Then it makes me think about that kind of stuff. And like tomorrow, I guarantee I'm in the basement. I have a huge box of old pictures that my mom gave me. I will go through those tomorrow because I'm just going to
great.
be like, you know what? I haven't looked at these in
That's great.
15 to 20 years. I'm going to go through
I
these
want
pictures.
to try to figure something out. I think we should try to make this Book of Dads something more.
Okay.
Like, let's figure out a way to make it. And I know we've had other conversations with all the other stuff we've done, but and it's not about my stuff. It's about, if you guys have something, like there's things that you guys have done that I would never even have experienced yet. So why don't let's try to figure that out. Let's get people who are listening to say, let's make it something. Like let's figure out a way to make this where we can have this idea of how can we make our ideas and how can we pass this on? How can we build our legacy?
I love
And if
that.
we can figure out a way to do that, as you get enough people together who are like-minded and are motivated, you're gonna make huge,
Yeah.
you're gonna make huge change.
Yeah.
And so I think it's something to think about. It's like let's figure out a way to do it. Because inevitably this isn't about like me being any more popular or this podcast being more popular, but it's about like making this for your
impact.
future. Right.
It's impact. It's like how can you impact not only for your own children, but like can you impact the dads in your community,
Right.
your tribe to do better so
Right.
that their kids are now getting that benefit.
Yeah.
Because again, so if I think that something that I've learned, or I think that electricity or how to figure out wattage is really important, and that's not something that applies to you guys right now, but if it's something that is available, then maybe down the road it's like, oh, this is like
Next week
I
it could
never
be,
thought
yeah.
this was
Absolutely.
something that would be matter,
Right.
or anything like that. I think it's something that. And again, I think I think that's what drives me in some of this stuff is just is giving that kind of that resource to people.
Well, that's fun because it's super practical
Sure.
and it's also fun.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know a better word than fun because
No, but I mean,
it's doing something that's it's going to give you some feelings of like your old man,
Right.
and it's going to give you some feelings of like trying to pass on legacy to your son and or your daughter, or whatever. Like it's fun.
Right.
I don't know how else to say it. Like
you're absolutely right, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think
Let's do
you
it,
guys
for
have
sure.
you guys have the medium more than I do because of you're more in tune, you're more regular. That I think that's something that people should, if you have those moments, like let's figure out a way
Yeah.
to collect it
I love that.
and put it through.
We should
100%
absolutely do
in.
that.
Yeah.
Because I think it almost it makes sense, like the talking dads, right? So it's dads talking, so they're talking
That's it.
about all these things. So it's perfect. Like this is the perfect medium to figure out something where we can all kind of come together and give that common resource for other dads. And you're doing it now with podcasts, so let's just take it to the next step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Let's do it.
Cool.
I love it. Feel good tonight.
I feel great.
Feel good. With all these, I'm just like thinking about a lot
I know,
of things,
right?
and I'm like, so thank you.
Yeah. Dude, thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
You're always welcome on our show.
Obviously, and just to hang out, we could even talk about this kind of stuff off the mic. Although this is always fun being on the mic, though. But
Right.
we don't even have to record. We can just sit here and talk like this.
Right.
It's weird.
Yeah, but we'd be hanging out.
do
Wouldn't
you
we? Yeah. But we can't have every episode with him. So if we want to just hang out with him,
Right.
At least
Yeah,
we wouldn't
I
have the
know.
phones in our
What do you
hands.
mean hang out? Like it's COVID. What are you talking about?
Yeah, we're not hanging out. This is we're not even at the same location right now.
We are 6 feet apart.
We have the technology.
No, seriously, dude. Thanks so much. I'm so
Yeah.
glad that we, kind of.
Well, thank you for reaching out. I
reconnected
really
and-
appreciate it. Yeah.
No, absolutely. If you get back on social media, great. But if not, and that works for you, keep doing what you're doing because you're doing really cool shit.
Yeah.
And like I don't think that you need that kind of validation.
Right.
But I know the man that you are. So keep doing it, and it kind of inspires me sometimes. So,
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm glad you came back on, and we'll do it again on the mics soon, a couple months or whatever.
Whatever.
But
Well,
offline, we'll definitely get together and do
I
some
definitely
shit.
think that we should. I'll definitely do a Not My Dad podcast where we'll get you guys back on.
Yeah,
I
let's
We'd
do.
love to.
Better Human Initiative. I'm in.
Whatever. Well, I mean, I think that makes sense to get because again, you guys were part of the impetus for a lot of that with the Better Human Initiative in itself. So
Mm-hmm.
We're in.
Absolutely.
Let us know.
Anytime. All right. Thanks again. Anything else you want to plug before we sign off?
No.
It's time.
I think of, yeah,
3.
I mean, I have, again, I'm not on most of the social media stuff. So I have my own little blog that I do, the Whiskey Monologues, it's called.
Yeah.
That,
I saw
I'm
that
trying
got
to, I'm
revived.
trying to get back into that. I think writing for me is cathartic. It's fun. It takes more, it's something that I really enjoy writing.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I actually, just for shits and giggles, everybody's got a fucking Sirius XM channel, right? Garth Brooks channel. So
Yeah.
I started the Not My Dad Bod radio on Spotify.
Oh, nice.
It's actually fun. Like you could just plug in as many goddamn songs you want. So if anybody's on there and it's fun, I love it. Like I'm just plugging in like everything. I have every single kind of song on there. So if you're on Spotify, check it out. It's cool. I love hearing it's
That's
just
great. And
like music again. It's one of those things. Like it just transcends
wonderful
a lot
medium.
of different
Yeah.
things. But yeah, no, I'm not plugging shit. I just want everybody to, enjoy being a dad, like being a father, really. And that was with a quote in the and I'm going to probably screw it up, but the quote in the book of Dad was that there's no instruction manual for being a dad. So it's what fathers are for. Mm-hmm. And I think that's true. Like we just
100%.
make this shit up as we're going along.
Yeah, you learn it on the fly.
That's
This
the dirty secret.
podcast and the things that you guys are doing really is part of that. It's like getting people together, talking about it. Everybody has, like every person that comes on the show has something to offer.
Yes.
100%.
Because everyone has an experience, and I think
Yes.
that people need to appreciate that. And people who have been on this podcast need to appreciate the fact that they've done something to further that mission. So
it's always helping us. That's
Yeah.
for damn sure.
Hell yeah. So you guys, I mean, thank you guys for continuing to do this and do it regularly and do it as dedicated as you are to doing it in 3 years. And that's awesome for you guys to be able to do that. And I'm really flattered to be a part of it because I feel like it's
Big
something
part of
that
it.
I'm like, I really appreciate having any part in your message.
Huge part.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, again, you definitely the first person that, like, we weren't just like, hey, we've known you for 20 years.
Yeah,
like,
right.
come do this stupid podcast with us. You know what I mean? Like, we met and we virtually met.
Right.
And then we met and then we sat down and here we are a couple years later. And
Still
I
keeping
mean,
in contact.
well, not only just keeping in contact, but it's been a lot of things. It's
Yeah.
Well, growing a lot of
hey,
things together.
Hey, I'm working on whatever. You got
Right.
any ideas on this? Like,
Right.
it's a true friendship that is built,
Right.
and that's pretty amazing. That
Yeah.
to think that a silly idea of doing a podcast like has fostered that,
Right.
Yeah.
and that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's incredible. I appreciate your kind words. 'Cause
Absolutely.
we're doing our thing, but it's only as good as the dads that we bring on.
Right.
Like, people would get really freaking sick of just me and Steve talking all the time. So
We would be
I
really sick of us
Well,
talking
we
all
would
day.
be.
Yeah.
I understand it.
Like, hey, you got any more advice for me? No, I don't. How about you?
I've literally given you everything 17 weeks ago.
Yeah, nothing's working.
But no. Again, thanks for the kind words.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, hanging out with us. It's been amazing. So if you haven't already, please make sure that you follow us on all the socials, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Download us on your favorite podcast and make sure you hit that subscribe button. And then check out the website, www.thetalkingdads.com. We're consistently putting up new content on the blog and trying to do some new resources and things like that. So more to come on that.
Definitely.
And that's about it, right?
That'll
Steve,
do
you
it.
got anything else?
Nah.
All right.
Got a lot.
Yeah. Take it all
Feeling
in.
good.
Share with your friends. This was a great episode. Hug your kids, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Oh, and by the way,
Oh.
don't be a manatee.
Don't be a
Don't be a manatee. Hey guys, if you love what you just heard or watched, and we know you did, do us a solid and hit that thumbs up. Share with your friends and throw us a comment, literally about anything. Your support legit keeps us going. Oh, and don't forget to give us that 5-star rating. We really appreciate you.